Hello everyone, welcome to the What If Anime YouTube channel. Today, we are diving into an exciting new story that will take your imagination to the next level. Let's get started. What if blessed with the powers of the god of war and raised to love his sisters? Well, I have to admit, that went much better than I expected. A pleased Hippolyta said as she walked through halls of the Themysciran palace with her two children trailing not far behind. The reason for the mother of two bright mood was because just moments ago the immortal queen along with her daughter bore witness to just how accepting and kind their sisters can be when she announced Naruto's presence and position to her fellow Amazons. Admittedly, a small part of Hippolyta feared Aunt Callape's theory of a number of Amazons not being too pleased to know a male would be given the title Prince of the Themyscira. But much to Hippolyta's relief, she received no outcries of anger when she offered the stage to any who would disagree with her decision. Though that could have been attributed by her Hippolyta informing the women of Athena's blessings. I truly hope they want Naruto here and didn't hold their tongues in fear of insulting Athena. As Diana trailed behind her mother, she carefully cradled her little brother within her arm. They did seem quite welcoming to little Naruto, mother. The princess happily noted, like her mother, Diana was ecstatic to know that Naruto wouldn't be treated like an outsider. Given our people's history with men, I'm surprised no one stepped up to argue against you, mother. Thanks to her history lessons, Diana was well aware of the suffering her mother and sisters endured in the past. That's because our little prince is nothing more than a child, Princess Diana. Both the queen and princess heard a voice say behind them. All it took was a quick turn to reveal the speaker to be a woman whose features included long orange hair fashioned into a ponytail, green eyes that seemed to dance with amusement, and an outfit that was favored among the Bana Migdal Amazons. Just because we Amazons have bad history with men, that doesn't mean we'll project our anger onto an innocent child. We're warriors, not monsters. Artemis, Diana chirped upon seeing her favorite combat instructor. Turning Naruto towards Artemis, the princess gave the infant a brief introduction. Artemis, Naruto, her name is Artemis, and she's the most talented archer in all of the Themyscira. I've once seen her hit an apple dead in its center from 500 meters away in a rainstorm. She's also teaching me the fighting styles of the Bana Migdal Amazons, and when you're older I'm sure she'll teach you too. Naruto's response was to babble incoherently. I am humbled by your kind words, my prince, Artemis said jokingly. She even went as far as taking a small bow. Hello Artemis, Hippolyta greeted. Not unlike a decent portion of the Themyscira's population, Artemis was not born among their people. Instead, she originated from a tribe of Egyptian Amazons that joined the Themyscira when their home was destroyed during a great battle. Ever since her arrival, the orange-haired woman continued to prove herself as a valuable sister with her fierceness in battle. Is there anything you need of me? There is indeed, my lady, Artemis answered before turning towards the two youngest Themysciran. Why don't go take your little brother to the garden, Princess Diana? I have things to discuss with the queen. Little brother. There's a word Artemis thought she'd never use. Diana's cheeks puffed up in annoyance at the way she was so casually dismissed. And why would I do that, big sister? As princess, don't you think I'm entitled to know what's going on in my city? She wasn't speaking out of pure nosiness or entitlement. Diana took her role as the princess seriously and wanted to be included in helping in problems that the Themyscira might encounter. According to her mother, being the princess meant she was a servant of the people and was expected to come to their aid when they needed her help. Trust me, princess, this is something beyond your age. That managed to get Hippolyta to arch a brow in curiosity. There weren't many secrets among the Amazons. Wipe that frown from your face, daughter, and don't worry about a thing, Hippolyta said in a motherly tone. Just do as Artemis says and take Naruto to the garden to play. If Artemis insisted that Diana was too young for this talk, then she'd have to agree to send the princess away. However, if she could, Hippolyta would later give Diana an abridged version of the conversation. Obeying her mother, Diana turned away from the two and began walking towards the palace's garden. Come, little brother, I'll show you my favorite type of flower. Once Diana and Naruto was out of listening range, Hippolyta turned towards Artemis and shifted her persona from caring mother to warrior queen. What is it, Artemis? She hoped with all of heart the conversation topic wouldn't be about her son's place in their society. I believe it would be best if we take this conversation to your throne room. That's where the others are. Others? Now seated on her throne, Hippolyta's eyes swept over the women who called the unscheduled meeting. Artemis, Antiope and Penthesilea, the commander of the Mysterious Royal Guards. So tell me, what is it that has brought us four into this room? The queen inquired. Stepping forward first was Penthesilea. Like the other women in the room, she boasted a beautiful appearance, dark red wavy hair, mocha-toned skin, and an armor that did nothing to detract from her feminine figure. It was I who called this meeting, my lady, Penthesilea revealed, and it's concerning your new son. Hippolyta gripped her throne's marble armrest so tight fractures were beginning to appear. What is it about Naruto? She asked in a strained voice. It seems her worries were coming true. Seeing the distressed look on her sister's face, Antiope made a move to calm her nerves. No need to worry, Hippolyta. We are not here to talk about Naruto being in any danger. Quite the opposite, in fact. We want to talk about Naruto's future. Feeling a wave of relief wash over her, Hippolyta encouraged the three to continue. What of it? Now that her queen was in a better mood, Penthesilea continued. While you were presenting the prince, I recognized a familiar look on a number of the Amazons' faces, a woman's longing. I could tell because they wore the same expression when you presented Princess Diana. Jealously? Hippolyta asked in disbelief. She couldn't believe that word could be used to describe any of the Myskeren. Unsurprisingly, yes, Artemis bluntly answered. You couldn't really believe you were the only one who longed for a child, my queen. Hippolyta had no comment to make. Warriors or not, we are all women, and it is in a woman's nature to desire a child. It didn't take very long for Hippolyta to reach the same conclusion the three before her did. Are you saying that when Naruto reaches the right age, we believe a number of Amazons will attempt to have him impregnate them? Antiope said, both her hands placed firmly on her hips. Well, it's only a theory that three Amazons thought up when they allowed their minds to wander, but we still believe this talk needed to be had. Momentarily shocked by what she just heard, Hippolyta found herself unable to greet one of her personal guards, Mira, who just entered the throne room. Queen Hippolyta, the raven-haired woman said as bowed, I have come bearing request from your loyal Amazons. Snapping out of her state of shock, Hippolyta addressed Mira. Who are these loyal Amazons? The queen asked. Mira's sudden appearance was a rare case of irony. Apologies, my lady, there are too many to name. That statement surprised every woman in the room bar the one giving the news. Well, can you remember all of the request? Antiope asked. Were women already planning to ask Hippolyta if her son could give them a child? Well, there are many who've made requests. They all want the same thing, Mira said, further confusing the women. They wish to hold Prince Naruto in their hands. Why? The confused queen asked. I honestly do not know, my lady. Letting the request sink in, Hippolyta found it difficult to say no. Send a few in, I would like to have words. Giggling softly at Naruto's ever-curious behavior, Diana watched as her younger brother crawled frantically through the garden, trying to take in every sight his bright blue eyes could see. Isn't the garden wonderful, little brother? The princess asked while expecting no answer, given the tragedy that led to her and her mother discovering Naruto. Diana was happy to see Naruto enjoying himself. After taking her eyes off Naruto's small form to admire the sight of a small flock of hummingbirds, Diana turned back to discover the blonde bundle of energy had scampered off into another part of the garden. Naruto, she shouted in worry. Thoughts of her younger sibling stumbling into a thorn-filled rose bush motivated the princesses to run frantically through the garden. The moment Diana rounded the first corner of the garden, she discovered her brother safe and sound along with Alexa, who's sitting comfortably on a blanket with a stack of books next to her. Well, hello there, little one, Alexa said as she set one of her books aside in favor of lifting Naruto up. Unlike the majority of her sisters, Alexa is the one of the few Myskerans who doesn't feel the least bit comfortable with a sword in hand. In fact, Diana couldn't recall a moment when she's seen Alexa holding an unsheathed sword. It's this lifestyle choice that encouraged Hippolyta to ask a well-read Amazon to instruct Diana in their people's more non-violent ways. So this the little prince I've been hearing about. Thank Hera, Diana said in relief as she joined the two on the blanket. Based on this little game of hide and seek, the older sister had no doubt when Naruto grows a little older sorry about disturbing your reading. I was not aware you were in the garden. No need to apologize, Diana. I don't mind the company. Especially if it's her favorite student. He's quite the adventurer, isn't he? It was obvious Alexa was commenting on how Naruto crawled around the garden without a sense of apprehension. I have a feeling he's going to be very popular among our sisters. What makes you say that? Diana wondered aloud. Oh, just a feeling. 8 years later, the first son of the Mistira. That was the title the Amazons of the Mistira unanimously decided to grant upon their beloved prince. During the first week of Naruto's sudden arrival, Queen Hippolyta offered every woman who inhabited Paradise Island the chance to hold the prince in their arms, that along with the infant's innocence stirred the love of children within every Amazon who chose to attend the event. And the turnout was very substantial. And so through the passing years the young prince knew the love of 1,000 mothers and the teachings of the Mistira's most wisest scholars and decorated warriors. Like a moth to a flame, the first son of the Mistira took to each lesson he was taught so that he might be with them heart and soul. He wanted to know all about the Mistira's history because he declared it to be his history also. He wanted to be great warrior to protect his home and her people just like any prince should. And the more the young boy grew the more he excelled. To name any great battle and what strategy brought the Amazons victory was a simple task for Naruto. And combat? It's nothing more than second nature to the boy who holds the blood of the god of war and the queen of the Amazons. No weapon was above Naruto's understanding. Anything that has a practical use on the field of battle could be wielded by the son of war with mere ease. The extreme proficiency with weapons wasn't the only gift that was bestowed upon the blonde. Herculean strength that matched his sister's belonged to Naruto. The ability to heal from debilitating wounds in a matter of moments and the uncanny ability to understand nature, among a few other things. But for all of Naruto's knowledge and talents there was one thing the child could not avoid, a bathing. I can wash myself, Philpus. That was the shout of few passing Amazons heard as they walked past the city's public bathhouse. Inside the marble structure, a number of the Myskerans giggled in amusement as they watched their prince splash water around in his failing attempt to break free of Philpus's hold. I'm sure you can, my prince, but as your loyal subject it is my duty to ensure that you receive a thorough bath. Philpus said in a mocking tone as she dunked the struggling blonde into the warm water. It wasn't a secret among the Mistira that Naruto disliked being treated because of his title as prince. He always preferred to be looked upon as another of the Mistira's children, therefore going out of one's way to help Naruto became a running joke among many women. When Naruto emerged from the water there was a half-hearted sneer on his face. Can he be annoyed by his sisters? Easily. But outright angry? Never. Your dedication to throne has been well noted, my dear sisters. Now can you please release me? Once he felt Philpus loosen her grip, the blonde prince made his escape. By Athena's owl, finally. He frowned as the Amazons once more laughed. Despite the fact that Naruto is currently sharing his space with a number of beautiful women, who didn't even attempt to cover their naked forms, the young boy didn't even show the slightest bit of embarrassment. And why should he? The sight of naked Amazons was a scene he experienced every single day. Now that she didn't have a prince to toy with, Philpus began lathering herself with soap. So what lessons will you be learning today, my prince? None, was Naruto's simple answer. Mother has decided to give me a day free of my studies and I intend to spend it hunting with Demos. Next to training alongside his sisters, Naruto favored spending his afternoons hunt with Giant Lion Friend. By the gods and goddesses, I didn't believe such a thing was possible, my dear sisters. Callisto, a Amazon who specialized in sculpting marble, loudly announced. Our beloved prince actually can spend an afternoon away from Artemis. Naruto's whisker-marked cheeks gained a small red tint as the Amazons laughed at his expense. Wah! What does that supposed to mean, Callisto? The naked dark-skinned Amazon offered the embarrassed blonde a mischievous grin. No need to embarrass, prince. Almost every Amazon on the Mistira knows you favor Artemis. The best response Naruto could muster was to submerge himself in the bathhouse's warm water. Tell me, my prince, what do you like most about Artemis? Is it her skill with a blade, fiery attitude, or is it her beauty? Philpus asked. I find all Amazons on the Mistira beautiful, big sister. Naruto mumbled out. Did you hear that, sisters? Prince Naruto finds us all beautiful. Suddenly the young warrior found himself surrounded by women. If you find us all beautiful, who's the most beautiful? Naruto felt a hand glide across his whisker-marked cheek as he stumbled to find a decent response. If the queen were to ask you to choose of the Myskeran to be your wife, who would you choose? And Naruto's breaking point was reached. I believe that this has been a successful bath and I am clean enough. My Hera grant you all wonderful sisters." Naruto yelled as he climbed out of the water and toweled to dry himself off. "If anyone has need of me, I will be in the forest." The Amazons giggled loudly as they watched their prince practically run to the exit. Now that his bath was done, Naruto stood outside the bathhouse clad in a crimson loincloth that reached around his entire waist, a snug-fitting leather vest, a pair of sandals, and finally a golden band that held the image of a ram's head wrapped securely around his right bicep. "All done, Demos. Apologies for making you wait so long." Philpus thought it would be funny to attend to her prince's needs. Lazing next to the bathhouse was a creature one could not believe could exist outside of a mythical story given its abnormal appearance. Easily measuring 8 feet tall and sporting a messy bronze mane, the golden-furred beast released a yawn that revealed a wicked set of sharp teeth that appeared capable of tearing through anything that found itself wedged between its jaws. However, no matter how frightening the beast may appear at first glance, it was allowed to roam the streets of Mistira without indent since the Amazons recognized him as Demos, their prince's ever-faithful four-legged companion. "Before we go off into the forest to hunt, I must make a quick stop at Io's workshop. There's something I must fetch." After waiting for Demos to shake off his laziness, Naruto and his four-legged friend began running through the city streets at astounding speed. With ease the boy and lion maneuvered through the Mistira's winding roads and beautiful instructors until they eventually made it to their desired destination, Io's workshop. Once the two arrived at that workshop, Demos took the interlude as an excuse to sunbathe while Naruto entered the building. Upon his entry, the Myskaran prince was greeted with the sight of Io working on a horseshoe. It goes without saying that Io is blessed with beauty, short brown hair, soft features, bright green eyes, and it was a shame her attractive fur was currently hidden underneath a thick apron. "Good afternoon, sister," Naruto said with a smile. The moment she heard Naruto's voice, Io turned from her work to greet the young child a wave. "Good afternoon to you too, Prince Naruto. I suppose you're here to pick up your hunting gear?" "Yep," Naruto answered with a nod. "Just give me a moment," Io said right before disappearing into the back of her workshop. It only took the blacksmith no more than 30 seconds to return with a bundle in hand. "Everything is as requested, little brother." After placing the leather bundle on an empty table, Io showed off her handiwork. A 18-inch serrated machete to clear out any bothersome foliage, a lather quiver that contained a couple dozen arrows, a bow that was decorated with the image of eagles, and finally a short dagger to put an suffering creature out of its misery. "I trust everything is to your liking?" "It is, sister," Naruto said with a twinge of awe in his voice. The equipment was masterfully crafted. "You have outdone yourself, sister. Did Lord Hephaestus aid you in their creation?" "HMPH, who was it that taught you how to talk like a charmer, little brother?" While equipping his newly fashioned hunting gear onto his person, Naruto flashed Io one of his infamous foxy grins. "Mira might have gave me few lessons." A couple of hours later, with his bow in hand, Naruto silently moved through the forest's thick canopy while a noticeably smaller Demos stalked the ground floor. Making use of his impressive vantage point, the young prince located a grazing deer in a large clearing. "Apologies," the young boy whispered as he shot an arrow at the animal. The metal and wooden arrow had little problems finding its way to the deer's neck. The kill was quick and painless. Before Naruto made a move to collect his kill, he took a moment to thank the gods and goddess for a successful hunt, as was his people's custom. Once his prayer was done, he abandoned his spot on the trees and landed next to Demos. "2 more like this one and we'll have enough to decent-sized stew," Naruto said as he attached his bow onto his quiver. "No, you stay here while I go grab the deer. I don't want you taking early bite." The lion released a quiet growl. "That's what you said last time, Demos. I will not be fooled again." While Demos stayed behind, Naruto walked into the clearing with intentions on fetching the deer's body. But just as the Myskaran prince began reaching for the corpse, the sound of heavy footsteps encouraged the young boy to move. Whatever attempted to take the prince by surprise cleaved the deer's body in two. Once Naruto's roll came to a stop, he raised his head to get a look at his assailant, a large centaur wielding a massive halberd. A quick glance in Demos' direction revealed his four-legged friend was trapped behind a wall of light, which meant he was on his own. The creature's face was filled with bloodlust. "Are you the prince of wenches?" Slowly, Naruto's baby blues began turning blood red. Watch your tongue, beast, or I'll rip it out and shove it up your ass. Mira might have been the one to teach Naruto how to charm, but Artemis instructed him in the ways of a proper threat. I'll take that as a yes. The man-beast said as he circled the young prince. My lord has wished death upon you, and I shall grant it. No, with practiced ease, the angered prince withdrew his bow and a single arrow and took aim at the centaur. You shall only try. The first arrow Naruto shot was blocked by the hybrid's halberd, but next the 3 hits impacted the beast directly in the chest. It was a shame its skin was tough stopped the arrows from doing any real internal damage. Gia, the centaur roared as it rushed the child with intent to run its weapon through the prince's form. During the mad charge, Naruto easily avoided the attack by jumping into the air, all while shooting a barrage of arrows. Whatever the centaur couldn't block with his halberd barley made it through the creature's thick hide. The moment its roiled target's feet hit the ground, the centaur swung its halberd in a downward strike in an attempt to cut the boy into 2. However, his weapon was stopped by the boy's machete. You're fighting the Maiskurin, beast. Naruto growled as he parried the attack with ease. His strength ensured the action was done with little to no problems. Thanks to the unexpected block, the prince was offered a clear opening when the beast stumbled backwards. In an impressive burst of speed, Naruto maneuvered himself underneath the centaur's large frame and lifted Horseman with his bare hands. Now be gone, he yelled while throwing the creature. Upon its landing, the centaur released a growl of annoyance as he was forced to use his halberd as a means to help lift him out of the mud. A child, thrown by a fucking child. I must kill, such a tale can never reach my lord, he'll kill me for it. Fueled by blinding rage, the hybrid once more attempted a direct charge. After waiting for the most opportune moment, Naruto quickly planted his machete in the ground while he sidestepped the attack and gripped the halberd's exposed handle, which effectively brought the charge to a grinding halt. Unskilled monster, I am impossible, the monster cried out as it felt all 4 of its feet began to leave the ground. Naruto looked deep into the centaur's eyes as he used his grip on the halberd's handle to lift the monster above his head. Nothing is impossible for the Maiskurin warrior, beast. And with that he slammed then-man horse onto the ground. As the creature laid on the ground momentarily stunned, Naruto retrieved machete from the dirt and aimed it in the direction of his 4-legged enemy. I hope Lord Hades has something horrible planned for you. Before Naruto could behead the beast, his serrated blade was blocked by the halberd. Why don't ask him in my stead? The centaur yelled as it used one of its 4 horse legs to kick the boy in his unguarded chest. Deimos growled in concern as he watched his friend harshly collide against the invisible wall that kept him walled out of the battle. Idiot, Naruto muttered as he chastised himself. I should have disarmed the damn thing. Before Naruto could point out any more of his mistakes, he was placed on the defensive as he used his machete to block a series of strikes. As the prince began backpedaling to avoid his attacks, the centaur gained a mad grin. My lord promised me a night with your sister when I bring him your head. Oh, the fun we will have. That comment would soon be regretted. That was the first time Naruto had heard someone speak such words about any one of his sisters. Naruto, without speaking a single word, gave the monster a dead-eye stare that somehow caused the 4-legged hybrid to freeze mid-strike. Something within the prince had suddenly snapped. While tightly gripping his weapon's hilt, the machete's serrated blade unexpectedly became engulfed blue flames. Once the centaur managed to snap out of its trance, the beast desperately tried to impale the young boy with his weapon. The flaming machete cut through the halberd's metal like water. Naruto's next move was a wild slash which left a large gash in the horse creature's chest, and once it recoiled in pain he threw his serrated weapon directly into the centaur's bleeding chest while flailing all 4 of its legs out of pain. The beast's pained screams meant nothing to the young prince as he jumped onto the centaur's horse-like frame and brandished his dagger. Not unlike the machete, the small blade became engulfed in blue flames right before Naruto began stabbing the monster without abandon. After the 5th slash, his hated enemy fell onto the ground. Monster, you're a monster, the centaur shouted as it attempted to climb back to its feet. A quick stab to the side put an end to any thoughts the creature might have of standing back up. Naruto, uncaring of the blood that caked his frame, took note of the flailing legs and promptly got rid of them. Remember this for the rest of your short life, beast. Your words caused you this suffering. In one smooth motion, The young warrior plunged the dagger into the centaur's horse stomach and ran the blade through the centaur's entire frame, effectively disemboweling the creature. As Naruto removed his hands from the dead centaur's entrails, a newly freed Deimos walked over to his side and gently nudged the young blonde, not that Naruto really noticed. He was too busy staring at his hands. I really enjoyed that. While his human friend was still entranced by the carnage he wrought, Deimos' sharp eyes were currently focused elsewhere. Although the forest's thick brush did an exemplary job at obscuring the mystery observer, the Myskrin lion could still easily sense someone watching them. Grrrrrrrrr. A deep growl emanated from Deimos as smoke could also be seen rising from his maw. It would be the sound of Deimos' threatening growl that pulled the young warrior from his daze. "What's the matter, Deimos?" Naruto asked as he tracked the overgrown lion's line of sight to the forest. "Is someone out there?" His response was another growl from Deimos. "Show yourself now and I give you my promise, you shall know mercy." It wouldn't be long before Naruto's call was answered. Emerging from the forest was a figure clad head to toe in armor that was defiantly not made by any of the Myskrin hands. Its appearance was way too demonic to be forged by any of his sisters. The only facial feature the prince could make out were two glowing blood-red eyes. Without showing any fear, Naruto held his dagger in a reverse grip. The moment the mystery being showed any signs of hostile, he would not hesitate to react. "Are you another beast after my life? Because if you were here from the start, I'm sure you know by now it will not be an easy task." The armored figure took one step forward, an act which prompted Naruto to tighten his grip and Deimos to fall into a pouncing position. A deep chuckle was heard before the man decided to speak. "Easy, child, I wish you no harm. I was just admiring the sight of you in action. Such aggression, such brutality, you're coming along nicely, boy." Despite the smooth tone Naruto was just addressed in, the mischievous first son refused to lower his guard. "Who are you, and what business do you have on Paradise Island?" For 5 uninterrupted seconds, the mystery man stared at the young blonde before he finally decided to rid himself of the horned helmet that hid his facial features. By Hera, now that the helmet was removed, Naruto found himself staring at a face that strongly resembled his own. "Who am I?" the newly revealed man asked rhetorically. "Why am you father, child? And I believe you should fix your tone when addressing me, child. After all, I did take time out of my busy schedule to witness your first kill." Naruto's only reaction from the reveal was to tightening his grip on his dagger's hilt. The words of creatures such as yourself are not to be trusted. The man who bore an uncanny resemblance to the mischievous prince gained a vicious grin. "Did your mother teach you that?" "Yes," Naruto growled out before lunging at the man with his dagger poised to kill. "She also taught me how to kill. My prince." That loud and distraught scream was one of the first things to reach Naruto's ears as he slowly limped into the mischievous, bustling marketplace with not only a plethora of freshly gained injuries littering his person but also 2 twin wicked-looking short blades that features a horned demon on both of the hilts, pronounced hooks on their lower edges and an intricate pattern of lines that glowed a light blue hue. Trailing just a few feet behind the limping prince was his feline companion, Deimos. And just like Naruto, the large lion boasted a few notable wounds. The first Amazon to reach the barely conscious prince went by the name Dessa. "My prince, what happened?" she asked as she gently grasped each of the boy's shoulders. After giving Naruto a quick once-over, Dessa quickly deduced the injuries had nothing to do with a wild animal or a freak accident. The multiple cuts that were scattered throughout the whisker-marked blonde's form were too even and cleanly made. They had to have come from a blade. Naruto, with a more than a little discomfort gracing his facial features, looked up from the ground and met Dessa's gray eyes with his cerulean ones. He can't be my father." And with that, the Myskrin prince collapsed in Dessa's arms much to the dismay of the gathered Amazons. Dessa, wasting not a single moment, effortlessly lifted the young blonde and began running in the direction of the palace with intent to bring the prince to his mother. Hours later, as the prepubescent warrior slowly returned to the land of the living, he could feel the gentle sensation of someone running their hands through his hair while humming a soothing tune. Slowly his eyes fluttered open to sight of Diana standing above him with a worried look gracing her features. The moment Diana noticed the change in her young brother's condition, she quickly brought him into a tight hug. "Thank Harry you're okay, little brother. I was beyond worried." The sound of her cracking voice validated her words. Do you remember what happened to you? Dessa said you've mentioned something about your father before you passed out, but surely she must have been mistaken. The memory of burying her brother's birth father years ago remained fresh in the princess's mind. No, my daughter, I don't believe Dessa was mistaken. Standing in the doorway of Naruto's room was Queen Hippolyta wearing a solemn expression on her beautiful features. The Mayu battle in forest, tell me, the look she leveled onto the bedridden blonde was filled with remorse. Although the Myskeren queen knew Ares would eventually make his presence known to her younger child, that didn't stop the Amazon from detesting the god's timing. Her son is young, caring, impressionable yet pure thanks to the women that surrounded him. But a monster like Ares can only corrupt the Amazon's first son. Naruto stared at his mother with utter confusion in his eyes. I don't understand. I thought my father died the day I arrived on the Mistira. At least that was what he was told by Antiope and Diana. Thinking back on the matter, Naruto couldn't recall a single time when his mother referenced his father. After releasing a heavy sigh, Hippolyta took Naruto's hand into her own and began telling her son and daughter about her meeting with the god of war. The Amazonian queen brought it all out to light, how she sent Diana away to avoid seeing a child die, the promise she made to dying man, and of course the deal she made with Ares. I couldn't do it. I couldn't allow a child to die in my arms. Diana smiled warmly at mother. You made the right choice. Ares' involvement be damned. Diana couldn't imagine living on Paradise Island without her little brother brightening her day. From the moment she was taught how to properly hold Naruto, the princess was completely enamored with her younger brother. While Diana was able to take the news in stride, Naruto's reaction was less positive. With a distraught look on his face, the blonde heir couldn't help but think back to his history lessons with Alexa. Though many years has passed since a single the Myskeren has been forced to take up arms to defend their home, Ares has always been a problem for the Amazons. When he isn't personally failing in his attempts to destroy all of the Mistira, he enlists the aid of fools like Hercules to train in his steed. All in all, if you considered yourself a the Myskeren, the god of war is defiantly your enemy. Upon noticing Naruto's troubled expression, Diana was quick to react. If you think having the blood of Ares running through your veins changes your place on the Mistira, you're wrong, little brother. You are Naruto, the prince of the Mistira, and you are loved. Although his older sister's words managed to put a smile on his face, Naruto still was worried his relation to Ares could eventually have a negative effect on his beloved sisters. So when will you make the announcement, mother? Hippolyta blinked out of confusion. Announcement? She parroted. What announcement do you speak of, my child? The one about my father. Naruto spat the word father out as if it contained venom. If all of the Mistira doesn't know about Ares' involvement, we should tell them. It's only right they know who walk among them. A frown marred Hippolyta's beautiful face. Who walks among them is their brother, not one of Ares' pathetic foot soldiers. Naruto, you are the Myskeren before all, remember that. Yes, mother, was the whisker-marked prince's immediate response. But I believe we should still tell everyone about Ares. The Myskerens do not keep secrets from each other. Hippolyta placed a kiss directly onto Naruto's forehead. Yes, they do, my son. They actually keep plenty of secrets from each other. The queen thought, just because each Amazon loves and respects on another doesn't mean they lay their entire souls to bear. There is no country in the world that can achieve greatness with placing a few skeletons into the closet. The Mistira is no exception. If that is what you truly want, I will have Philpus make the announcement that you want to address all of the Mistira. That would be appreciated, mother. As Hippolyta left the room, Artemis entered with a large bundle held in her arms and a knowing grin on her face. You seem to have healed well, little prince. The red-headed archer said as she took note of his uncovered chest. When he first was brought through the palace's door hours earlier, his whole form was littered with cuts and bruises. I've always healed fast, Artemis, Naruto said with a grin. After all, that's the only way I can survive my training sessions with you. When it came to learn how to fight from Artemis, the word mercy had no room to exist. The Bana Migdal Amazon preferred a trial by fire method of teaching rather than handing out lectures. Is that a present for Naruto? Diana asked as she glanced at the bundle Artemis held. Before answering the question, Artemis walked over to the bed and sat the package indirectly in front of Naruto. I assure you, princess, these are not from any of the Myskeren. With his curiosity reaching its peak, Naruto unwrapped the bundles and he and Diana were giving view of short blades. Why? Why does these look so familiar? Naruto wondered while running a hand across one of the blade's flat surfaces. HMPH, curious. Artemis muttered with an arched brow. So you really can't recall where you saw those blades? The response she received was a shake of the head. That's strange, because Dessa told us you had a pretty nice grip on those when you came back to the city. I did? He asked while searching through his mind in a bid to remember. Well, besides stumbling into the market looking like you've just got on my bad side, Dessa said you were barely conscious. So I guess it shouldn't be so surprising that you have short-term memory loss. Barely paying Artemis any attention, Naruto took hold of one of the sword's hilts and lifted it of the bed to test the weight. It feels so familiar, he marveled, like I've been training with these all my life, which was a surprise to Diana. She attended just about every one of younger brother's training sessions and she couldn't recall a moment when he ever wielded anything that resembled those wicked blades. Could you have gotten them from Ares? The princess hesitatingly asked. She couldn't see Io devoting her time to forging such cruel-looking weapons. Quote. Naruto couldn't find it in himself to answer Diana's question. Artemis had nothing to consider. She has already fully embraced the idea that Ares was the one to give Naruto the, admittedly, impressive blades. But that still didn't explain why he came back into the city in such terrible shape. What exactly did you and the God of War discuss, little prince? As Naruto mulled over Artemis' inquiry, his face scrunched up in concentration. He told me he was proud of me. Not in those exact words, but hell, he can barely remember why he went out into the forest in the first place. Proud of you, Diana said in bewilderment. Why would he be proud of you? You live life as a Themysciran, and Ares has always harbored great hatred for our people. Unless the God of War is referring to her brother's prodigious skills with weapons, she didn't understand what Naruto could have done to gain Ares' favor. He was proud of my first kill. Naruto outright admitted as he unconsciously recalled the rush he felt during the battle. It was like nothing he'd ever experienced before. His heart was pumping at Mach speed. His mind was focused on one singular goal. More specifically, he was proud about how I went about doing it. Artemis' jade eyes narrowed. Explain. Without any hesitation, Naruto complied with Artemis' demand. He told them about how his and Deimos hunt unexpectedly became a battle, how angry he felt when the creature insulted his home and sisters, and how that led him into brutally killing the centaur. While Diana was angry over the ordeal her little brother was forced to go through, Artemis found herself more than a little impressed. So not only did you kill the beast that was insulting and threatening your sisters, but you also made an attempt on the God of War's life. Naruto opened his mouth to explain himself, but Artemis' surprising outburst stopped him before he could get a word out. You have been raised well, little prince. Very well. Pride was flooding her voice. Diana was both shocked and appalled at Artemis' reaction to Naruto's tale. How can you take such a story in with a smile, Artemis? Naruto could have been easily killed. Artemis scoffed at Diana's reasoning. But he wasn't killed. Like his mother and sisters before him, our little prince bravely charged into battle wanting nothing more than to defend the Themyscira. You should be proud of him, Diana. I know I am. I relived, Artemis, the princess stated. Relived my brother didn't die trying to take on a god. And I don't understand how you can always be so battle-ready when we are people of peace. Despite all the battles that filled the Themysciran history books, the Amazons consider themselves a peaceful race. That is until they're forced to take up arms. The reason we are even able to enjoy these peaceful days are because we left no army alive to threaten us, princess. Just like you and the others, I too enjoy the peace speeches the queen gives on special occasions, but I also don't forget the battles that lead to our peace. Can both of you please stop this? Naruto shouted, effectively grabbing the attention of the two lovely women. As interesting as this debate is, I want you both to know it's unwarranted. I understand that just because we live in peaceful days doesn't mean we should forget how to wield a blade, and I also understand that as a Themysciran I should hold peace in high regards, which I do. Unconsciously, Naruto began gripping the hilt of the weapon he held. But the only excuse I have for my actions is that I was mad. When that thing threatened my sisters and insulted them, I forgot that there is such a thing as mercy. Diana, replicating her mother's earlier action, kissed Naruto's forehead before placing a hand on his shoulder. I know you had nothing but the best intentions in your heart, little brother, but you must remember that the edge of a sword isn't always the answer. Make no mistakes, your actions honor the Mischira, but it also put you in harm's way. Suppressing a coddling comment, Artemis wordlessly decided to put off her sparring match with Diana later on. Your sister speaks the truth, little prince. You've honored us all with your actions and bravery, she said while ruffling Naruto's spiky locks. Now, I believe you are to address the Mischira soon, am I correct? The young blonde nodded in confirmation. Well, it wouldn't be very appropriate to talk to your sisters as is, the princess and I will leave you to prepare. And with that, the two gave Naruto a small bow before leaving the room. Once Diana and Artemis were no longer in sight, Naruto tossed both of the identical swords across the room as if it was a crime to even be in their presence. I don't need you in my life. 2 years later, is there anything on Gaia's green earth that's better than a well-written book, Demos? Alex idly asked Demos as she rested her body against the enchanted lion's massive form while reading a book that told a story about an adventurous young woman who travels the world. Just like the red-headed beauty expected, the notoriously lazy lion simply yawned in response to her question. I suppose you are entitled to your own opinion, my friend. While the living personifications of Beauty and the Beast enjoying the quiet setting the sun-drenched beach offered, Demos' ears began to involuntarily flicker as the sound of something emerging from the ocean reached him. A lazy glance upward revealed it was none other than the Mischira's first son, Prince Naruto. Over the course of 2 years, not much has changed in Prince Naruto's life after he revealed that the blood of the Amazon's most dreaded foe runs through his veins. Of course, after the initial reveal, there were a number of the Miscreants who felt uneasy with Naruto's presence, that in turn led Hippolyta to assign the prince 4 royal guards. Although the number of Amazons who distrusted the prince was few, Naruto still felt wounded. It was only after Artemis, under no orders, who made the story of Naruto's meeting with the god of war public knowledge help sway the Amazons back onto the prince's side. With the empty and torn fishing net in hand and droplets of water falling from his form and into the sea below, Naruto wore a frown as he threw the net aside. Annoying beasts, the prince muttered in frustration. Alex, closing her book for the moment, took notice of her prince's irate state. What's the matter, Prince Naruto? Has the megalodons been eating your catches again? The literature-loving Amazon asked. Yes, it seems those lazy sharks have decided to quite hunt for themselves and eat whatever they can find in our nets, Naruto said as he glanced back in the direction of the Argon Sea. I thought I had an understanding with those overgrown fish. A calming smile was all Alexa had to offer the angry prince. You shouldn't be so upset them, my prince. You know how the megalodons get when they're hungry. The fact that prehistoric monsters such as the megalodon sharks still exist and roams around Paradise Island shores caused the Miscreants no worries. Instead of being cautious or fearful of the massive hunters, the Amazons treated the megalodons as protectors and allowed them to swim their waters undisturbed, and in return the sharks have never showed any aggression to an Amazon. Sighing, Naruto swam to the sandy shore and walked onto the beach. I'm not that angry megalodons, big sister. I'm just slightly annoyed I couldn't catch a king crab for I.O. He admitted as he made his way over to Alexa and Demos. Besides, he couldn't hate the megalodons, ever since he was taught how to swim by Alkawan, one of Naruto's royal protectors. The giant sharks have been serving as his protectors from the creatures of the deep. I just felt I need to do something nice for her to repay her for the excellent blade she's forged for me. Well, I'm sure she'll more than appreciate the effort, Alexa assured the prince with a smile. Now, I believe it's time we start heading back to the city. Otherwise you might be late training session and upset Artemis. A frightful shiver ran up Naruto's spine as he thought about being forced to spar with the angry Artemis. I suppose you're right, big sister. Let's. Before he could finish his statement, Naruto found himself silenced as something large and fast flew past his head. By Hera, he may have not have any idea what the object is, but the trail of smoke makes it easy to track. What was that? Alexa wondered aloud as she watched airborne craft head towards the forest. I don't know, the prince answered before jumping onto Demos' back and grabbing 2 handfuls of his bronze mane. But we should find out. Hang on tight, sister. And with that said, Demos began following the trail of smoke. It took Demos only a matter of seconds to make it to the forest from the beachfront. And the deeper the three traveled, the more obvious it became they were not only ones who bore witness to the spectacle. Just a few meters of them were Diana, who was horseback, and Artemis, who ran with a spear in hand. It didn't take long for Deimos' speed to outpace both his sisters. "Just what do you think you're doing, little prince?" Artemis yelled the moment Naruto and Alexa rode past her. At this point it was obvious to Naruto that everyone was chasing something, or someone, but what or who was still a mystery to the prince. "To be honest, Artemis, I have no idea," he happily announced before running into a dead end. A glance downward revealed the only way out to be an opening in the ground. Alexa took one look at the crevice and another at her prince. "By Athena's owl, please tell me you're not going." "Yes, I am." Without waiting for Alexa to finish her sentence, Naruto hopped off of Deimos' back and jumped directly into the crevice. The fall was steeper than expected, but not very life-threatening to an Amazonian prince. After landing in a stream and allowing the current to direct his course, the whisker marked the Meisker and eventually ended up on a river bank, with the only thing to greet him was the sight of Diana standing over an unconscious figure. What did I miss? Garbed in pair of loose-fitting orange pants and black shirt, Naruto stood alongside his sisters and mother as they awaited for Diana's male captive to regain concussions. Without any shame, the prince stared at the man in wonderment. He looks so weak, Naruto thought. Diana said he couldn't even take a punch. Are all men weak where he comes from? Alcuin, taking note of her prince's curiosity, placed a hand on his shoulder before bending down to speak in his ear. "Behold, my grace, this is one of the filth you have been raised to be better than." It wasn't a secret to the Amazons of the Mistira that when it came to upholding one's responsibilities, Alcuin is a borderline extremist. It took multiple orders from both the prince and the queen before Alcuin and her fellow royal guards, Mirto, Karis and Philomela, stopped threatening to harm any Amazon who came close to Naruto without obtaining permission beforehand. But a hidden fact about Alcuin and her circle was that they hated Diana with a burning passion. Each of the royal guards views her presence as a threat to the Mistira, while the princess promises a new dawn. Artemis silently watched as Alcuin attempted to sway the prince into picking up her extremist thoughts and thought about intervening. It was a decision made by her and a few other Amazons in secret that Alcuin can't be allowed to poison their prince's mind with her fanatical beliefs. As Artemis began to moor towards separating Naruto and Alcuin, the prisoner began stirring. Upon his return to consciousness, the unwanted male guest immediately took notice of the beautiful women that stood before him. "Wow, I haven't had this dream since I was 13. Artemis' response was a viscous punch. Of course she held back a considerable amount of her strength just to ensure she didn't dislocate or outright break the man's jaw. "You will speak only when spoken to," the fiery Amazon said in a steel tone. "That's enough, Artemis," Hippolyta said as she walked to the front of the crowd with the golden lasso in hand. "Welcome to the Mistira. We are the Amazons. We live simple lives and we wish to keep it that way. There are a few questions we had to ask you." With a look of defiance in his eyes, the bound man stared at the queen. "Sorry ma'am, soldiers don't talk." He genuinely sounded as though he wouldn't budge on the matter. From Naruto's perspective, he had to stifle a laugh. In the presence of the lasso of truth, unwillingness meant nothing. Paying the words of the man no heed, the queen effortlessly ensnared the stranger in the lasso of truth. "Hey, I'm into the kinky stuff too, but if you think that's going to make me more cooperative, you're wrong. Identify yourself. The lasso compels you to." As the rope glowed brightly, the man couldn't help but responded. "United States Air Force, Colonel Stephen Rockwell Trevor." The now named Stephen said in a robotic manner. The glare Hippolyta was currently receiving was a mixture of anger and confusion. This lasso was created by Lord Zeus to bypass the untrustworthy nature of man. You cannot resist its power. She explained before getting back on topic. "What interest does your government have in our island?" And like before, Stephen's answer came with no hesitation. "No interest whatsoever. The only reason I'm here is because my plan was badly damaged and landing on your island was my only chance for survival." "Well, that's good to know," Artemis said before turning towards the queen. "Shall I kill him now?" While the Air Force pilot looked understandably shocked at Artemis' question, Hippolyta simply rolled her eyes at the archer's violent nature. "There is no need for that. This man poses no threat. We shall give him a food, water and a boat and leave him to the mercy of the agency." "But what about the megalodons?" Naruto interjected. It was at the moment Stephen realized he wasn't the only male in the room. The moment they catch his scent, he'll be dinner. Not our problem, my grace. Alcuin shamelessly announced. Wait a minute here, Trevor yelled. Megalodons, as in megalodons, sharks which are the size of a city bus. As the Myscrins wondered what exactly is a city bus, the doors of the room flew open. And standing in the threshold was a noticeably panicked Philpus. My queen, the primordial flames. They're dying. The room was soon cleared of all Amazons, leaving a bound and confused Stephen Trevor to his thoughts. I really hope that kid didn't say megalodons. The chambers of the primordial flames. Like most rooms that held something of import, the chambers of the primordial flames featured some of the finest Themyscran architecture. Large marble pillars, walls emblazoned with the images of the gods and goddesses, and of course the centerpiece of the room was the primordial flame itself. Usually the blue flames that danced on the golden disc stood as tall as a human, but now, its size was no bigger than a bush. I don't understand, the fire was lit by the gods themselves, how can it be dwindling? Hippolyta asked Manali, the oracle of the Amazons. The gods, my queen. Manali began as she gazed at the dying flame. They cry from Mount Olympus. There is great danger on the horizon and the world is in need of the Mysteira's help. Artemis couldn't help but frown underneath the weight of the oracle's words. And just why should the Mysteira care about the world's trouble, Manali? Can't they protect themselves? Apparently they cannot, Artemis. The oracle answered, because it has been decreed by the gods that we must choose a champion, the very best among us. She shall prove herself through tournament and the trail of flashing lighting. And then, she alone must venture out into man's world and put a stop to this great danger. Hippolyta only needed a few brief seconds to herself before responding to the gods' commands. If the gods will it, it shall be done, she said before turning towards Philpus. Proclaim it throughout the Mysteira. Tomorrow a tournament will be held, a champion will be born. As their mother spoke, Naruto couldn't help but notice how Diana's eyes lit up at the aspect of leaving the island. Once the room held a few less Themyscrins, Hippolyta was approached by her children. Mother, I wish to be included in the tournament. Diana's request came as no surprise for Naruto. Hippolyta was quick to address her daughter's request. No, Diana, she said firmly. I will not allow you or your brother to put yourselves in harm's way. Call it a mother's selfish need, but it is my will to keep you both shielded from the evils of the world. Diana's attempt to rebuttal was quickly squashed. Be silent, daughter. I am your queen as well as your mother. And I have spoken. And with that, Hippolyta left for her throne room. Naruto wasted no time in taking his dejected sister's hand into his own. You don't plan on letting this go, do you, big sisters? No, little brother, I do not. The next day, quite the turnout, mother? Naruto said as his eyes swept across the Themyscran-made Colosseum, the spectators' balcony he occupied along with his mother, Philpus, Antiope, Manali and Stephen Trevor offered an impressive bird's-eye view. There wasn't an unoccupied seat in the whole stadium. Indeed it is, nephew. Antiope agreed. It's shame the princess isn't here to join us. The reason as to why Diana was a no-show was no secret to those who inhabited balcony. Well, to Trevor it was. But he didn't really matter. I do not fault my dear Diana for being upset with me, Hippolyta admitted while idly twirling cup of one in her right hand. My decision to exclude Diana from the tournament was unjust. At the mention of Diana, Naruto made sure his mother didn't see his face as he took a seat next Stephen. Unlike his mother and aunt, Naruto knew the real reason as to why the princess was absent. With the help of a bronze helmet and slightly altered hairstyle, Diana hid herself among the competitors in order to enter the tournament. Hey, kid, Trevor said in an attempt to grab the prince's attention. After being told that the city of the Mysteira was composed exclusively of women, plus one whisker-marked exception, the pilot couldn't help but to wonder what's the story behind Naruto. So, what exactly is your deal? Before Naruto could make an attempt addressing the question, Alcuin quickly withdrew her blade and pressed it against the unwanted male's throat. If you ever address his grace in such an informal manner again, by the flames of Tartarus, I will not hesitate to behead you. While his mother and aunt played ignorant to Alcuin's actions, Naruto found himself calming the captain of his royal guard. There is no need for any of that, big sister, he said softly while placing his hand over Alcuin's own. The moment Alcuin heard her prince's words and felt his touch, She shivered slightly before sheathing her weapon. Yes, your grace. Now that Alcuin no longer had her blade pressed against the man's neck, Naruto was ready to converse. I'm sorry, Mr. Trevor, but I'm not really familiar with the way you speak. My bad, Trevor said while unconsciously rubbing his neck and silently thanking the prince for calling off the bloodthirsty guard. I'm just curious about your story. Without even realizing it, Naruto's face became a blank slate. It's really not that interesting. Moments after Naruto's comment, the sound of trumpets filled the air announcing the start of the tournament. For the next 3 hours, all of the Mishra bore witness to a great competition that was filled with an assortment of challenges that ranged from simple foot races and archery contests to pushing 2-ton boulders across up a steep hill and no-holds-barred sparring matches. Once the tournament was done and only one the Maiskarin remained, Hippolyta commanded the newest Amazonian champion to reveal herself. A myriad of gasps filled the air as Princess Diana revealed herself to be the winner. No, I forbid this, Hippolyta loudly announced. Manalip was quick to gain her queen's ear. My queen, you mustn't. The princess has rightfully gained the title of champion. To deny her the title of champion would be to go against the god's will. Hippolyta made a tight fist as she stared at her victorious daughter. If the gods will it, it must be done. It's been over a year since Diana left the peaceful shores of Paradise Island to begin her god-giving odyssey with Colonel Steve Trevor hitching a ride back home. And since then all of the Mishra has been missing their kind princess. But none more than Naruto. It was only a single day after Diana's departure when the spiky-haired prince realized how much he preferred having life left undisturbed. Although he never knew a moment of loneliness, the Mishra's first son couldn't stop an uneasy feeling from emerging within the pit of his belly whenever he woke up to realize Diana won't be joining him and the queen for breakfast because she's currently off on some grand adventure the gods saw fit to drop into her lap. However, despite the great deal of longing he felt for his older sister's return, Naruto would not allow himself to walk around the palace sulking. He has far too many things to attend. So through sheer force of will, Naruto pushed his thoughts of Diana aside momentarily in favor of returning to his daily routines. Reading with Alexa in the garden, sparring with Artemis in the courtyard, helping whomever calls upon him and exploring the island with Deimos at his side. The only real time he had to devote to thinking about his sister would be in the dead of the night. You really didn't have to do this, my prince, an Amazon who went by the name Mnemosyne said as she walked few feet behind the prince with a basket filled with herbs and spices in each hand. Such an act like this is beneath you. Nonsense. Naruto responded with a charming smile as he also carried 2 baskets filled with goods picked from Mnemosyne's garden. As the prince of the Mishra, I am nothing more than a servant to my people. Nothing is beneath me, big sister. It was during Naruto's morning stroll through the city when he happened to come upon Mnemosyne toiling away in her garden without a helping hand. Of course he knew his only option at that moment was to assist his sister. Thank you, my prince. The Amazon muttered as her fair skin turned slightly red. Unlike so many of her fellow Amazons, Mnemosyne was known to have a bit of shyness to her, a trait that did not follow her on the battlefield. You honor me with presents. Naruto stopped himself from outright scoffing at Mnemosyne's words. You speak to me as if I'm your better sister, when the truth is I'm not. Just like you, I'm nothing more than the Maiskarin. The snowy-haired Amazon almost dropped her baskets in response to Naruto's words. But my prince, you are not a simple Maiskarin, Mnemosyne exclaimed. You are the first male Maiskarin and the product of Queen Hippolyta's mercy and Ares' godly abilities. You have the potential to be so much more than us. I know, and that scares me. After the pair finished harvesting any and all of the ripe crops, Naruto helped Mnemosyne sort out the herbs and spices before heading out to continue his day. With nothing else to grab his attention, the prince idly walked through the streets greeting any Maiskarin who looked his way. My prince. At sound of his title and a horse's neigh, Naruto turned to see his mother's personal guard quickly approaching him by way of horseback. Philpus, how are you this fine morning, big sister? The royal child said once the armored Amazon was only within a few feet of his person. I'm quite fine, little brother, Philpus said after bringing her steed to a halt, especially in the light of wonderful news I've just received. A golden brow was arched at the Amazonian general's declaration. Mind-sharing, big sister. Philpus graciously bowed her before speaking. Your sister, Princess Diana, will soon be with us once more. Her God-given quest has come to an end and she's currently only a few miles out. Instantly, Naruto's eyes lit up in pure excitement. Really? Yes, my prince, the dusky-skinned Amazon replied. And your mother has requested your presence at the palace. She wishes you to be by her side when the princess arrives. Before answering Philpus, Naruto looked to the sky in search of something in particular. Seconds later, his search ended, prompting him to release a loud whistle. Send our beautiful and kind queen my apologies, Philpus. I'm afraid I can't wait that long. Blinking in surprise, Philpus had every intent to ask her prince what he planned on doing, but the sudden arrival man-sized eagle put her question to rest. I shall inform the queen you'll be arrive alongside the princess. Thank you, Philpus, Naruto said as he mounted the large eagle. And which way does our sister travel? Northeast, my prince. You heard her, my friend, we travel northeast. With an understandably loud caw, the eagle effortlessly took to the sky. Despite the prince's added weight, the large bird of prey flew at high speeds. After a few minutes of flying, the eagle and its blonde passenger were more than a few miles away from the Mistira. Thanks to Naruto's Amazonian physiology, he was gifted with the ability to see things others can't, and that included the Lancinarian morphing disc, which currently held the form of an invisible plane. Once the eagle was side by side with the plane, the prince fearlessly jumped, mid-air, onto its wings. A second later, the plane's cockpit opened to allow Naruto entrance. He wasted not a second entering the airborne craft. I have missed you, little brother. Those words compiled with a brilliant smile were what awaited Naruto in the Lancinarian's cockpit. And I've missed you too, big sister. Naruto quickly wrapped his sister in a hug as the two of them flew home. Hours later, after Naruto personally escorted his sister to the palace, Diana greeted everyone in sight before ridding herself of the equipment she used to complete the god's quest. Once everything was properly stored in the armory, Hippolyta made a commanded that a large feast be held in honor of their princess's safe return. The queen herself led a hunting party that was charged with gathering the meat, while the prince helped out in the kitchen and the princess assisted with preparing the dining hall. It would be hours after sunset before everything is properly prepared to support the great feast Hippolyta has demanded. However, the finished product makes everything worth all the hard work. The hunters provided the cooks more than enough fresh meat to use. The cooks made a variety of dishes to suit the palates of hungry Amazons, and dining hall looked good enough to host a god's birthday. So after singing a few prayers to the gods and a heartfelt speech from the queen, the Amazons began enjoying the fruits, no pun intended, of their labors, while Diana told them stories of the outside world. The princess told her fellow the Myscrins about the outside world's technological advances, how the barrier that separated genders was still present but weakening as more and more women proved themselves to be equal to, if not better than men in their chosen profession. But most importantly, Diana told the Myscrins about the friendships she's formed and challenges she's faced. For Naruto, it was fascinating to hear about the exciting things he lacked in his life, not that he resents the peaceful one he lives with his mother and sisters. It's just that Diana's tales began to spark his sense of adventure. Days later, almost done, Naruto muttered to himself as he used a sharpening stone in order to ensure his double-edged sword maintained its sharpness. Since today was particularly hot, the prince occupied the lavish balcony that's attached to his room. He loved the overlooking view of the Mistira the balcony offered, and just as the day seemed like it would be like so many others, something truly abnormal happened. Diana, Diana, heed thy master's voice. Erupting from the heavens above was a great voice that was heard all throughout Paradise Island. Although the booming voice was new to Naruto, that didn't stop him from deducing the speaker. Lord Zeus, who else but a being of Olympus could be capable of projecting their voice over an entire island country? Be not alarmed, my children. Be joyful, for thou art beloved in my sight. For reasons he didn't quite understand, Naruto felt uneasy about Zeus' voice. It contained something that seemed corrupted. For her triumph over the forces that would see us all to ruin, the Princess Diana has earned a special gift, one which alone I'm able to bestow. All throughout the sky lightning danced every which way. Thus come with me, Diana, come into the presence of thy master. Shouldering his sword, Naruto watched as the clouds above parted to allow Diana to ascend into Olympus. Quite a sight, isn't it, my son? With wide eyes, the prince quickly turned to the side of Ares, fully clad in his godly armor, standing in the middle of his room. "You," Naruto said with a sneer. Tightening the grip on his weapon's hilt, the warrior prince rushed the god of war with intent to draw blood. The attack ended when his father effortlessly caught the incoming blade with his armored hand. "Is this how you would greet your father, child? A swinging sword and blind fury?" With his free hand, Ares removed his helmet to reveal he's still using the face of Naruto's birth father. "I approve." Understanding that his sword was lost to him, Naruto relinquished his hold on the hilt and quickly made his way wall that was decorated with an assortment of weapons. His immediate choice was a long spear. "Why are you here, Ares?" Naruto asked with his spear poised to strike. "I'm here to warn you, my son," Ares said with a benevolent smile. Naruto's eyes narrowed in suspicion. "Warn me about what, King of Lies?" After carelessly tossing aside Naruto's weapon, the god of war began slowly walking towards his son. The spear Naruto attempted to run through his stomach was easily brushed away. "Trust me, child, I'm not here to lie to you, I only want to help." The god's words were filled with serenity. Naruto glared at that face that looked so much like his own. "Do you believe me foolish enough to trust any words you speak?" "HMPH, your mother has done an excellent job teaching you how to distrust me," Ares idly noted. "Anyway, the words I speak to you are nothing but the truth, for there is nothing to gain from lying to my son. I don't particularly like the Amazons, but of course you know that. The number of the wars your mother and sisters fought are due to instigation. And with that said, I know you, my son, care about them a great deal, and because of which I'm here to warn you about Zeus' intentions." "Intentions?" Naruto parroted. "Why would I need to be warned of the God King's intentions? He wishes to reward Diana for all her hard work. At least that's the idea he gained from Zeus' words." Ares shook his head dejectedly. "I know for a fact that your mother and sisters has told you all about the gods who inhabit Olympus, but are you telling me they've failed to inform you of Zeus' habits? On Mount Olympus, Zeus' obsession with betting any woman who caught his eye was well known, much to anger of Hera. Over the years, in an attempt to hide his multiple betrayals, the God King has employed a number of tricks to sleep with women. In most cases, Zeus would selfishly disregard the effect his unwanted advances left on the misfortune women's lives." "Speak clearly, Ares, and tell me what you're alluding towards." "Naivety. Hippolyta allows my son to suffer from naivety," the god muttered before setting the young the Myskrin straight. "My father intends to take you beloved sister's chastity despite her opinion on the matter." Ares watched as Naruto's eyes widened. "Like I said before, I have no love for the Amazons. The only reason I bring you this information is to see what you will do with it." Before Naruto could form a proper response, a scream, not unlike Zeus' voice, erupted from above and filled the air of the Mysteria. It only took the Myskrin prince a second to realize the pained voice belonged to his sister. "Diana." Ares maintained a look of neutrality at the sound of the Amazonian princess's plight. "I'm guessing the princess did not reciprocate my father's advances. Do you wish to aid your dear sister?" "Yes, of course I do," was Naruto's immediate response. "See, can you help me?" If rescuing Diana meant he needed to ask Ares for help, Naruto was prepared to pledge his loyalty to the god of war right now. Keeping a smile from his face, Ares simply walked over to the door that led into the palace's halls and placed a hand on its wooden frame. "Tell me, what do you intend to do to help your sister?" Naruto glanced towards the heavens, then back at Ares. "What I must." "Good answer, boy. Now prepare to walk among the Olympians." And with that said, Ares opened the room's door, and instead of the palace's hall, a blinding light greeted Naruto. "Before you go, I have something for you." With a snap of his fingers, Ares watched as a blue flame enveloped Naruto's entire person. Once the flame died down, it took Naruto a few moments to discover what was different about himself. Attached to his back, by some unseen force, were the blades of exile in all their glory. "Save your sister from Zeus' unjust fury." Sparing just a few seconds, Naruto met Ares' eyes. "Thank you, father." After that, he ran directly into the light. What met Naruto on the other end of the door was a number of glorious sights, massive marble structures that couldn't possibly be made by human hands, temples supported by nothing more white clouds, and so many other wonders. But for now, nothing mattered but finding his sister. Using the screams of his sister as a guide, Naruto eventually found himself standing in the upper rafters of a great hall while Zeus, surrounded by a number of other gods and goddesses, hurled bolts of red lightning at Diana. Fueled purely by rage, the prince withdrew the blades of exile from his back and lunged at the god king with a primal roar. Zeus, the citizens of Olympus watched in shock as the Themyscira prince dragged both his blades against Zeus' back, effectively putting an end to his sister's pain. Even Hermes, the fastest god alive, failed to properly respond to the surprise assault. Despite the massive wounds he sustained underneath the blades, Zeus did not scream in pain or even cringe. He simply turned to his assailant. "Thou hast dared to raise arms against thy master." Of course, Zeus recognized the child to be Hippolyta's own, which in turn meant he's a Themysciran and a servant of the gods. With his blades wet with the god king's blood, Naruto glared at Zeus without a hint of fear in his eyes. "You are no master of mine, Zeus," the prince loudly declared. "You are nothing more than almighty deviant to me." Zeus shook with rage. "Either thou is a fool or hast forgotten thy place. I am the king of gods. Whatever I so choose to do should be worshipped and praised by thou." Suddenly, blue flames cloaked the blades of exile's entire frame and Naruto's eyes became blood red. "You wish to honored for forcing yourself on women. You truly are mad. The Themyscira is already filled with women who have witnessed cruelty of humanity, and now you wish to come along and show them the cruelty of gods. The Themyscira is mine, child. If I so choose to make it my own personal brothel, there is nothing thou can do to stop me." "You're just like him," Naruto muttered. "You just like your son, Hercules. Nothing but a defiler given power." "What did thou just say? Does your divinity fail to give you working ears, Zeus?" And that was all Zeus could take. Emerging from the god king's hand were waves of red lightning. "Thou dost dare." Despite the intense pain he felt, Naruto didn't want to allow Zeus the satisfaction of hearing him yell out. Biting his bottom lip hard enough to draw blood, the enraged prince maintained his glare on Zeus while tightening his grip on the blades of exile's hilts. When it became apparent Zeus would not stop until he received a cry of pain, the beautiful Hera decided to intervene. "That is enough, husband. Wife, thou would also keep me from doing what is within my right." The queen of the gods placed one of her hands onto Zeus. "I would keep thou from killing our grandson." Heeding the words of his wife, Zeus put an end to his assault and allowed the child to fall unconsciously to the ground. "HMPH, this child has not only took up arms against his master but also spilled my sacred blood. I cannot allow these misdeeds to go unpunished." A frown marred Hera's enchanting features. If Zeus was willing to torture an Amazon who refused his advances, what would he do against a demigod who drew his blood? The goddess queen was not willing to find out. He acted in the defense of his sister, husband. Thou would punish him for that? She didn't need an answer. Hera knew the stance her husband would have on such matters. With a small wave of her hand, Hera sent Diana back to Paradise Island before walking over to the small prince and taking him into her arms. "Hast thou lost thy mind, wife?" Zeus raged. "I was in the middle of dispensing punishment against these disrespectful Themyscirans. And I am in the middle of ending it, husband." With the unconscious prince in hand, Hera left the meeting hall and made her way to her personal chambers. After placing the child on her bed, the godly queen began gently running a hand through Naruto's spiky locks while humming a soft tune. It would be minutes before Naruto's blue eyes fluttered open. To ensure the whisker-marked prince understood the situation, Hera greeted the child with a benevolent smile. "Arise, my young Themysciran, and greet the goddess who loves you." "Diana," was the first word to come out of Naruto's mouth the moment he regained consciousness. In a fevered panic, he began searching the room for any sign of his sister. Taking both of the prince's whisker-marked cheeks into her hand, Hera spoke in a calming voice. "Easy there, my child. Thy beloved sister is back home and safe from my husband's wrongful wrath." The pure sincerity in the goddess' voice allowed him to believe her. "Thank you, great mother, for saving my sister," he said while humbly bowing his head. "I was inspired by actions, my beloved child." Hera admitted, "Thy foolish actions." Naruto made no attempt to look ashamed of his actions. "I understand how unwise my actions were, but I couldn't just stand idly by while that deviant punishes my sister for refuse to be his plaything." Just thinking about the god king infuriated the Amazonian prince. In the snap of a finger, Hera lost her motherly expression and her eyes gained an absent look. "My husband is indeed a deviant. I can't not even count the number of women he has betrayed me with. Tell me, my beloved child, what is thou willing give up? What is thou willing to do in order to protect thy fellow the Miscreants? Anything, great mother, Naruto said without a hint of hesitation. Anything, that is most pleasing to know, my beloved child, she said before kissing the prince's forehead. Now go back to thy mother and sisters, we will have more words soon. And with a wave of her hand Naruto was returned to the Mistira, leaving Hera to converse freely with her son. You can leave the shadows now, Ares. Right before Hera's very eyes, the god of war appeared seemingly from thin air. You have plans for my son. It wasn't a question. Ares knew his mother's kindness came with ulterior motives. The god queen didn't even try to meet Ares' eyes. Thou presumes too much, my son, my precious son, Hippolyta softly said as she stood over Naruto's sleeping form while gentle caressing his exposed whisker-marked cheek. Look at you, sleeping peacefully as if you didn't make an attempt on the king of Olympus' life. Because Zeus saw fit to ensure every Amazon knew what awaited them if they denied his future advances, the queen and all of her the Miscreant sisters had no choice but to listen haplessly as Diana screamed underneath the unjust punishment Zeus dealt out to the princess. In the mind of the queen, Diana's pain-filled screams seemed to last a lifetime, that is, until Naruto made a surprise visit to Mount Olympus. Hippolyta and all of the Miscreant fearfully listened attentively as the Amazonian prince insulted and berated Zeus for his perversion. While some, like Artemis, made no attempt to hide the pride and amusement they felt in Naruto's actions, the beloved queen couldn't do anything but hold her breath in wait of Zeus' retaliation. As both a mother and warrior, it pained the proud woman that she couldn't come to her children's rescue. However, unlike her husband, the goddess Hera lived up to her reputation of kindness and returned the prince and princess home. After ensuring their health and informing them how worried she was, Hippolyta gave Naruto an hour-long lecture about how foolish his actions were, to which he aptly replied, "Mother, I would not hesitate to do it again." Every woman in ear's length of the conversation smiled proudly as the queen embraced the prince while whispering, "I know. You really are quickly becoming the man I thought you'd be." After spending hours upon hours in the throne room in discussions with her top advisors, Hippolyta decided to pay her son a late-night visit only to find him fast asleep. Not that she blamed him, today was emotionally exhausting. Gifting Naruto a quick peek on the forehead, Hippolyta gently adjusted the blanket that covered her son's form before quietly exited the room. May Morpheus grant you pleasant dreams, my little golden lion. Hera knows you deserve them. As the raven-haired queen entered the palace's halls, she only had to turn her head to the left to gain a view of the oak wood door that led into Diana's room. Taking in a sharp breath, Hippolyta entered the princess's room and immediately found herself greeted with the sight of Diana toying with the gold necklaces that held the initials WW. According to her daughter, it stood for Wonder Woman, the name the people of the outside world bestowed upon her after witnessing her heroic deeds. Good, her mind is already focused on the outside world, something that would normally annoy Hippolyta, but in lieu of certain circumstances she's hoping Diana's wandering mind may prove beneficial. Upon noticing her mother's presence, Diana quickly placed the necklace on her nightstand and stood up to properly greet her queen. "Ah, mother, to what do I owe this late-night visit?" Despite the question and her smile, Diana knew the unpleasant reason for her mother's late-night visit. She wished to talk more about Zeus' betrayal. "Please, take a seat, Diana, we have much to discuss." Once the princess placed herself on the soft surface of her bed, Hippolyta joined her daughter. "Did you know Artemis had intents to steal your brother's first kiss today?" Hippolyta asked as she giggled at the memory of the Bana Migdal grasped Naruto's whisker-marked cheeks. Her claim was, it was nothing more than a well-reward for his grand act of bravery. And it would have been a well-deserved reward. Diana quickly replied, "He came to my aid when I desperately needed help, just like he was taught, mother." It still warmed her heart to hear how fearless her little brother acted in the presence of Zeus just because he felt the overwhelming need to help his sister. "I don't quite know how, mother, but I will find a way to properly show Naruto how much I appreciate his act of kindness." The queen gained a sad smile as diverted her eyes onto the ground. "I think I have a solution for your dilemma, Diana." Once the princess looked at her with curiosity brimming in her blue eyes, Hippolyta, after a small internal struggle, made her suggestion known. "You can take your brother far away from the shores of the Mistira. Needless to say, Diana was more than shocked at her mother's proposal. "You can't be serious, mother," the princess shouted. In reaction to Diana's loud outburst, Hippolyta quickly covered her daughter's mouth with her right hand in order to keep their conversation under a certain volume. "I'm going to have to ask you to speak more softly, my dear daughter. As you know, your brother's room is right next door and I wish to have him remain ignorant of this conversation. Understood?" Once the princess nodded in agreement, Hippolyta released her gentle hold and explained the reasoning behind her surprising suggestion. "Now, I know this isn't what you may want to hear, but taking Naruto away from the Mistira is one of the best thing you can do for him, Diana. I've talked it over with my advisors, and we've reached the conclusion that Naruto isn't safe here and it would be best if you leave. This is because of his actions against Zeus on my behalf," Diana quietly concluded. After witnessing firsthand what type of person the God King was, the Amazonian princess couldn't imagine Zeus letting her little brother go unpunished. When Hippolyta nodded in confirmation, the princess instinctively clenched her fists. I wish I can say such a thing is highly unnecessary, but she wouldn't even believe herself. "Please tell me, this isn't permanent, mother." "Oh, heavens no," Hippolyta said with no hesitation. "This isn't a banishment, Diana. We just think it would be best if your brother goes to a place where Zeus' reach is limited. Because Olympian gods depend on the prayer and faith of mortals to keep them from fading from existence, their sway in the outside world is noticeably weaker than what it would be in the Mistira because the number of people who still praise the Olympians has substantially dwindled over the passing years. Unlike on Isle of the Amazons, Zeus and his fellow gods are not omnipotent and can be killed if they go where their name isn't honored. You must know Naruto won't expect this idea with open arms, mother," Diana said as thoughts of her brother's infamous stubbornness entered her mind. There wasn't really many things that could put Naruto in conflict with his mother or sisters, but whenever the blonde bundle of energy found himself disagreement with a fellow the Miscreants, the arguments are known to be legendary. He would most likely view leaving the Mistira as an appeasement to Zeus. Hippolyta nodded in agreement. She was well aware just how hard-headed her son could be when faced with something that clashed with his principles. "You are absolutely right," the queen said as she rose to her feet and met Diana's eyes. "Which is why I, Hippolyta, queen of the Mistira, command you, Princess Diana and Prince oversee the Mistira's return to the world by constructing and running the Miscreant embassy. As my children, you too will be responsible for ensuring the world knows that we the Miscreants may be kind and just, but if threatened, merciless." "An embassy," Diana said thoughtfully. This wasn't the first time thoughts of the Miscreant embassy entered the princess's mind. During her time in the outside world, she attended a United Nations meeting where a number of foreign diplomatics suggested the Mistira join their ranks. As tempting as she thought the offer to be, Diana had no choice but to refuse. Only the queen has the power to dictate whether or not the Mistira can be revealed to the public's eye. And here she was, the queen, giving Diana permission to spread the Mistira's message. "When shall I inform Naruto of our new responsibility?" "First thing tomorrow, and let him know you and a handful of Amazons will be departing in 5 days. That number should be more than sufficient enough for me to figure out who I want joining you and your brother." 5 days later, Naruto, dressed in Bana Migdal-styled clothes which included a stylized red and blue gladiator skirt, red leather vest and of course his ever-present gold ram armband, impatiently paced back and forth around the throne room in wait of his sister's arrival. "Where is she?" the warrior prince muttered as he fought the urge to go personally search the palace for his sister. Initially, he was a bit skeptical with his mother and Diana's timing, but after proper explanation from his mother about how important his role will be, Naruto's skepticism quickly changed into pure enthusiasm. "We were supposed to have left for the Lancinarian morphing disc 5 minutes ago." From her throne, Hippolyta watched in amusement as her youngest child continued to walk aimlessly around the large room. "No need to fret, my dear son. I'm sure your sister will arrive the moment she is able," she said in a reassuring tone. Although in her eyes the Miscreant embassy was nothing than a ruse to get her son off the island to avoid any possible retaliation from Zeus, Hippolyta was happy to see Naruto so ready to embrace his princely responsibilities. His upbeat attitude did a very good job showing off his willingness to contribute to his home's future. "Well, I hope she able sooner rather than later." And right on cue, the large marble doors opened and in entered Diana, garbed in her Wonder Woman outfit. with a small band of Amazons trailing behind her. Apologies for my lateness, little brother, but I seemed to run into a number of our sisters who wished to personally say goodbye. That is, if you are not in too much of a rush to receive your sister's well wishes. Suddenly, Naruto felt as though he had more than a few minutes to spare. There isn't much on this world that can make me too busy for my sisters. Behind the prince, his mother smiled benevolently. Io, the mysterious beautiful and extremely talented blacksmith, was the first to step forward with a large white silk bundle clutched in her arms. My dear prince, the accomplished blacksmith said before bowing and humbling presenting the bundle to Naruto. With the knowledge that you will soon be departing Paradise Island to spread the word of the mysterious glory to the world, I have crafted you a sword to help you carve your way through any obstacles that might block your path, and a shield to protect you from the evils that will undoubtedly wish to cause you harm. Although the prince and princess's trip was supposed to be purely diplomatic, word had gotten to Io about all the dangers Diana encountered and that encouraged her to create the prince a proper weapon. Your gift honors me, sister, Naruto said as he unfolded the silk bundle to reveal Io's gifts to the world. The shield looked as though it was made out of pure gold and held the image of a red 5-point star in its center. As for the sword, which he had to unsheathe, was a thing of beauty. The crossguard resembled a golden eagle spreading its wings. The grip was fine leather painted red and the blade itself measured around 28 inches long and held a distinctive ripple pattern going through its form, which incidentally gave him the answer to what martial was used in the forging of this fine weapon. Valyrian steel. According to his afternoon lessons with Alexa, Valyrian steel was manufactured in the depths of Hades by the smith god Hephaestus and given to the Amazons by way of Athena. Thanks to the divine effort that went into the Valyrian steel's creation, the Amazons were able to use it to forge some of the most deadly weapons of wartime. Such fine craftsmanship, Io, Hippolyta said as she looked over her son's newest armaments with a praising eye. Though she made no verbal comment, she instantly recognized that the sword was modeled after her own. I shall treasure these all my life, big sister. While Io was still bowing, Naruto walked over to her and placed his forehead onto her own. Just as I treasure you and the rest of my family. Of course, family meant every Amazon who inhabits the Mistira. May Lady Hera see you safely returned to our shores, Prince Naruto. And with that said, Io gave way to another the Maeskrin, Antiope. Looking as beautiful as always, Antiope took a knee and gestured for the blonde prince to come closer. I swear, Hippolyta must have placed a spell on you when you were a child, my dear nephew, because I doubt anyone can actually be so handsome without any sort of enchantment. The blonde Amazon said as she lightly placed 2 fingers on Naruto's ever-present gold band. Do you remember the day I gave you this? Of course, Aunt Antiope. Naruto immediately responded. On my 5th birthday, you told me it kept you safe through a number of battles, and if the need shall arise it will do the same for me. And I bet you're wondering just how can a simple piece of jewelry aid me in battle? The curiosity in her nephew's eyes conveyed was the only response she needed before show off what made the golden band so special. Because, Naruto, this isn't just any armlet. For a few short moments, the band glowed brightly before magically separate into 3 separate parts. Upper shoulder, bicep and lower arm. And like the small band before it, the fleece was decorated with the image of a ram. Behold, the golden fleece. A Hephaestus forged item capable of block and redirecting just about anything. Anytime you find yourself in conflict, the fleece will always be sure to make its presence known. As Naruto properly thanked Antiope for the fleece, Hippolyta descended her throne and walked over to her son. While this whole gift exchange is a little impromptu in my eyes, I do have something for you also, my son. With her right hand, the Amazonian queen removed her left bracelets of submission and handed it to Naruto. It didn't need to be said, everyone in the room knew just how significant Hippolyta's gift was. Naruto marveled at the indestructible cuff his mother had just placed within his hands. Thank you, mother, I promise you this will never leave my person. And with that said, he slipped the bracelet onto his left forearm. You wear that bracelet well, Prince of the Amazons, the Maeskrins heard a surprising voice say. In a near simultaneous act, the Amazons diverted their attention towards the throne to catch sight of the goddess Hera seemingly relaxing with a tranquil smile on her face and a small parcel in her lap. Upon recognition of their goddess, the Mycrans humbly bowed. Lady Hera, Hippolyta began, "You honor me and my family with your presence." There never was a point in Hippolyta's life when she didn't hold Hera in high regard. After all, she and her daughter saw the Amazons through some tough times. So when word reached her the goddess queen was the one who saved her son from Zeus' wrath, she made sure that each of her nightly prayers were directed towards Hera's continued reign. "You honor yourselves, Hippolyta," Hera said as she waved off her fellow queen's kind words. "Now approach me, Hippolyta's little lion." Without question, Naruto walked over to the goddess. "So brave, so strong, and yet so young. I see many great things in your future, child," the goddess queen said as she handed Naruto a parcel. "Since the theme of the day seems to be shower the prince with gifts, I figured I shall participate." The way Naruto carelessly ripped away the parcel, Rappen reminded the room of his age. Once all the paper was gone, the prince held a very peculiar-looking cloth in his hand. The fabric itself, while blacker than the deepest abyss, it was also heavenly to the touch. If anything, it felt like very fine silk. Another eye-catching detail about the fabric was how it strongly resembled the night sky. All around its form a number of glowing, small white dots could be seen doing a very good impression of faraway stars. Taking the initiative, Hera took the cloth from Naruto's hands and channeled a bit of her power through it, causing the cloth to grow in size. Once she was done, the cloth was long enough to serve as the prince's cape. "This, little lion," the goddess said as she placed the cloth-turned cloak onto Naruto, "is made from starry firmament, a special material that will allow you to soar like an eagle." "Many thanks, Lady Hera. I will try my very best to live up to the aspirations you have for me." "Oh, I know you will, little lion," Hera said as she placed both her hands together for a moment before separating them. Wedged between the goddess' two palms, much to the amazement of the Mycrans, was the highly recognizable form of a lightning bolt. "Behold, one of my traitorous husband's lightning bolts. There isn't any need to fear that he might notice its absence. The lecherous fools has hundreds of these things and very little need to hurl them unless he's having one of his infamous temper tantrum." Naruto watched in amazement as the goddess who favored him embed the lightning bolt into his newly gained bracelet of submission, effectively turning the flawless silver into pure gold. Naruto, out of pure instinct, tightly clutched his left hand, causing a sphere of lighting to surround his fist. "Well, this is interesting." With intent to thank the goddess for her gift, Naruto looked up only to discover Hera had returned to Mount Olympus. Now that Hera was no longer in their presences, Hippolyta along with the other Amazons stood upright once. "Naruto, Diana," the queen said with a slight tremble in her voice, "we should be leaving for the Lancinarian morphing disc now. I believe we made the others wait long enough." With Hippolyta taking the lead and her children following closely behind her, the royal family made their way out of the palace to the streets of the Mycrans. Flanking both sides of the road that would lead the queen and her brood to the Lancinarian morphing disc was every single able-bodied the Mycrans clad in their full armor. The presences of their extended family caused the family to stride with an exuberant amount of pride in their step. Upon reaching the morphing disc, Naruto and Diana were greeted with the sight of those who would join them on their task. Artemis, to represent Bana Migdal Amazon's opinions. Alexa, because of her encyclopedia knowledge about the Mycrans' history, will undoubtedly come in handy during certain conversations that are sure to take place in Demos, because the big cat would obviously be lonely without Naruto around to keep him company. Initially, Artemis was going to make a comment about the royal family's timing, but it went unsaid the moment she got an eyeful of Naruto's new equipment. "That isn't a bad look for, little prince. In fact, I may just have to appoint myself as your personal guard to ensure there won't be too many harpies nipping at your heels." Alexa rolled her eyes at what Artemis counted as a compliment. Who knows, Artemis, our prince might actually find himself a wife in the outside world. "Nonsense," the archer barked. "He'll marry Amazon, and that's the end to that." Paying both Artemis and Alexa little mind, Hippolyta opened her arms wide with intent to embrace the prince and princess. As her children happily clung to her, the prideful mother had a few more departing words. "Diana, be who you were born to be, my beloved daughter." And Naruto, never change. After exchanging a few more tearful parting words, the brother and sister along with Artemis and Alexa climbed into the Lancinarian morphing disc's cockpit while Demos went through a necessary transformation. A sound reminiscent of a purr could be heard before a kid of fire enveloped the large lion for a short moment. Once the flames fully dissipated, a small lion cub could be seen occupying the spot where Demos once stood. "Let's go, you cowardly cat," Artemis said while banging on the invisible hull. "I would very much appreciate it if we are able to leave before sunset." In one smooth motion, the bronze lion cub jumped into the cockpit and settled himself into Naruto's lap. "It seems everyone is here and ready, princess. Start this thing up and fly us to the lands of liars, thieves, rapists and all sorts of other evils." As the Lancinarian morphing disc left the Earth's surface, Hippolytus smiled sadly. "Hera, please ensure that my children return to their home unharmed." A lazy yawn escaped from Demos' fang-filled maw as he snuggled into the cashmere sofa that decorated the living room of Diana's luxury high-rise condo while paying rapt attention to the large television screen that completely covered the adjacent wall. According to the princess herself, the apartment and all the expensive gifts that filled it were given to her by a number of wealthy benefactors who felt indebted to the Themysciran after she put a stop to a mass kidnapping ring that was being perpetrated by a group of low-red mercenaries. Initially, Diana was uncomfortable with using the expensive condo, but that changed a day ago when the Lancinarian morphing disc dropped her and the others off in the middle of Central Park and they needed a place to stay. Moments after the Themysciran party entered the fancy apartment, Diana ordered some takeout before she gave her fellow Amazons a crash course about how the world around them works to ensure they were prepared for some of the strange cultural differences she knew they're bound to witness during the course of their stay, such as rudeness, thievery and general individuals who just didn't have a kind bone in their body. For Artemis and Alexa, none of what the princess said came as a surprise. They were very much aware what evils lurked in the world of man. After Diana was satisfied with her lecture, she used the apartment's phone to inform all of her friends that she has returned to New York with a new mission and made promises to visit each one of them. It didn't exactly take long after the phone called for the accomplished Air Force pilot, Colonel Stephen Trevor, to make his way over to the Themysciran's temporary base of operations, Diana's condominium, where he immediately offered his services to their cause due to his friendship with Diana. With a decorated military officer by their side, Diana's confidence in their mission's success increased 5 times over, making her believe it was only a matter of time before the Themysciran embassy was approved by the United Nations. So the very next day, the princess, along with an annoyed Artemis and eager Alexa, left the condo with intentions to visit the United Nations headquarters, leaving behind both Naruto and Demos to await their return. While Demos was able to busy himself by enjoying the modern marvel that is television, a bored Naruto walked into the room after pacing through the apartment for the 5th time and took a seat on the couch right next to his 4-legged companion. Instead of his Themysciran-made clothes, Naruto's newest outfit consisted of a dark red muscle shirt that did nothing to cover his lighting-empowered bracelet of submission and golden fleece, a pair of average jeans that were being held up by a leather belt that featured a buckle that greatly resembled the 5-point red star that decorated his shield, and a pair of black running sneakers. Finishing off his ensemble was a leather strap he wore around his torso to allow himself to keep his Valyrian steel sword close by having it strapped across his back. All of Naruto's new clothes were a gift from Trevor, who wanted to help the warrior prince fit in with the teenagers of his world. Although both Diana and Alexa approved of the outfits, Artemis refused to have her prince wear a shred of the clothing unless the outfits were modified to become more weapons-friendly. "I fail to see how Diana can live here comfortably," Naruto muttered as he glanced at the TV screen. Unlike Demos, he couldn't find anything interesting about television. In his eyes, the whole concept seemed to revolve around watching someone live their lives while you waste your own. HMPH, there isn't even enough room to hone one's skills properly. It's only been a single hour since the others left the condo, and already the Themysciran prince was growing tired of being confined to dungeon Diana called her apartment, while the others head to the UN headquarters to begin official proceedings that will eventually re-emerge the Themyscira back into the world. The promise of an eventual tour around Manhattan upon their return did very little to make the time pass easier as he awaited his sister's return. "I wonder if Diana and the others will have a problem if I did a little exploring?" Naruto asked no one in particular as he abandoned his spot on the couch and walked over to the sliding door that led out to the balcony. Technically speaking, he wasn't exactly commanded to remain in the confines of the apartment. "I'm sure if I leave now, I can return back before anyone noticed I've left." Instead of encouraging or opposing the idea, Demos simply continued to focus his attention exclusively on the Law and Order marathon that was currently showing. Taking Demos' silence as approval, Naruto slid the door open and walked onto the balcony. With a simple snap of his fingers, the starry firmament cape appeared in his hand and he draped the enchanted fabric around his body. Just 2 hours, Demos, and then I'll return. And with that said, he fearlessly vaulted over the ledge and began his 48 stories free fall. The sound of the starry firmament rustling in the wind did little to dampen the screams that began to fill the air once the people on the sidewalk noticed a blonde teenager was plummeting towards the ground at an alarming rate. Naruto gained a small grin as he waited until the very last moment to activate the starry firmament's special attribute to stop himself from becoming another stain on the worn concrete. Paying little mind to the odd stares and hushed whispers, the blonde prince mentally commanded the unseen force to release its hold, which caused him to drop harmlessly onto the sidewalk's concrete. After his body calmed down from the burst of adrenaline he felt due to his free fall, he took a moment to scan the sea of faces, and for the first time in his life Naruto found himself feeling slightly self-conscious. However, after mentally reminding himself that his mother chose him to be a representative of the Mishira, the Amazonian prince straightened out his back and crossed his arms over his chest. Hello everyone of the outside world. I am Naruto of the Mishira, son of the immortal queen, Hippolyta, and the younger brother to the most fiercest warriors who have ever taken to the battlefield, the Amazons of the Mishira. Each word he spoke was filled with an exuberant amount of pride. Since his mother trusted him to be representative of their home, the blonde prince figured he has a responsibility to carry himself certain way, and so he decided to introduce himself to the world in a grandiose fashion. It didn't take the gathered crowd 10 seconds before they processed the strange blonde's boastful proclamation and began taking pictures with their cell phones. While some New Yorkers were satisfied with just taking pictures and murmuring among themselves, a haughty-looking girl with long wavy brown hair dressed in a red t-shirt that held the image of the Wonder Woman crest and a blue skirt that was decorated with a number of small white stars broke away from a group of teenagers and made her way towards the Mishira's first son. "Hey, Blondie, isn't the Mishira the place where Wonder Woman is from?" the girl asked as she boldly invaded the personal space of the blonde demigod. Giving the way, her group of gal pals began to roll their eyes in annoyance. This wasn't the first time their friend decided to put herself on center stage. If the pompous girl's actions was done to unnerve foreign blonde, she chose the wrong warrior prince. "That's correct. The Mishira is the home of Wonder Woman," Naruto said while effortlessly meeting the odd girl's skeptical stare. "Hey, Mary, you mind getting out of the kid's face?" one of the girls on the sideline yelled in an exasperated tone. "You're being totally rude." For a moment, the now-named Mary turned her attention away from the younger teen and onto her friend. "Just give me a second here, Jennifer. I want to see what happens when someone calls this kid out on his crazy claims." After that was said, she returned her attention back onto the blonde. Just because he can fly doesn't give him the right to go around telling people he's the great Wonder Woman's brother, which was an obvious lie in her eyes. "Tell me this, kid. How can you be from the Mishira if the Mishira is an island comprised of only women, huh?" Just like a millions other people, Mary watched the exclusive interview Lois Lane held with Wonder Woman, so in turn she believed she knew a few undisputed facts about the island nation from which the super-powered princess hails. The Mishira is indeed home to thousands of women. Naruto had no problem admitting that little tidbit of information was correct. And one lone male, me. To emphasize his point, Naruto pointed one of his thumbs at himself. "Queen Hippolyta is my mother, and Diana, who you know as Wonder Woman, is my sister by blood." He didn't really see a reason to add the god of war onto his impromptu family tree. Mary crossed her arms underneath her still developing chest and stuck up her nose. "I don't believe a word of anything you just said." Naruto blinked once in the face of the girl's disbelief before shrugging his shoulders. To be honest, I don't really care if you believe me or not." The way Mary's face lost its snobbish composure revealed the blunt response wasn't what she expected from the spiky-haired blonde. With wide eyes, she watched as the younger teen turned towards another direction and began walking away with no intentions to argue. "Wah! Wait a minute," Mary yelled before running after the possible prince with her friends begrudgingly mirroring her actions. Aren't you at least gonna try and prove you're telling the truth and not sprouting nonsense? Naruto idly scratched the back of his head as he made note of the girl's annoyed expression. I don't really feel the need to prove anything to you, was the prince's simple answer. I know I'm Diana's brother just as she knows she's my sister. And that's all I need. It didn't matter to Naruto if 1 or 1,000 people of the outside world called him a liar. Just as long as his mother and sisters acknowledge his place among the Amazons, everything else was just white noise. For reasons Mary didn't quite comprehend, she felt compelled to learn all she could about the strange blonde, and why would he claim to be Wonder Woman's brother? How old are you? Based off the couple of inches she had over him, Mary knew she was older, but she couldn't help but wonder by how much. 13, so he's 3 years younger than us with superpowers, Mary thought. After Naruto offered the bit of information, the floodgates seemed to have broken wide open. What's your workout regimen? How does Wonder Woman smell? Is all of that real gold? Are you actually carrying a real sword right now? Earlier you said your mother is the queen. Does that make you a prince? Those and so many other questions flew in the prince's direction, and being the person his mother raised him to be, he answered each one. Although all of her friends seemed to have no problem taking Naruto's words at face value, Mary's skepticism remained strong. HMPH, I still don't believe him. I mean, why would a race of warrior women allow a boy to have a position of power? I believe him, one girl said as she stared intently at Naruto's features. He just looks so regal. The way his hair in gold catches the sun. Hey, are you in America because you're looking for a girl to become your princess? The girl asked in a hopeful tone as she pressed her body against Naruto. Naruto barely spared the attached girl a second glacé as he answered her question. No, I'm not looking for a wife at the moment. Thanks to all the time he spent around the women of Paradise Island, Naruto was somewhat spoiled when it came to the touch of a female. In order to get the Prince of the Mistura's attention, it would take a very special woman. Can you guys please stop encouraging his craziness? Mary said through gritted teeth. That comment was able to spark a loud debate between the girls on whether or not the younger teen is a prince. But I'm not crazy. By this point, the crowd was beginning to disperse once it became clear they weren't going to see the blonde perform another superhuman feat. That was the thing about New Yorkers. They were so used to seeing strange and amazing things it would take something more than a flying teenager to hold the attention of a crowd of easily bored New Yorkers. With a shrug of his shoulders, Naruto decided to leave the girls to their debate and began to make his highly anticipated adventure. Naruto wasn't able to block away before Mary and her friends caught up to him and offered to take him around the city. With the group of female New Yorkers acting as his guides, Naruto was able to visit a number of New York's world-famous landmarks, and the only thing he had to deal with were questions about what he found attractive in women. Their first stop was Times Square, which was followed by a trip to the Rockefeller Center and afterwards the Empire State Building and many other places. 8 hours later, so, where are we to go now? Naruto asked with a hint of eagerness in his voice as he faithfully followed the girls through a dimly lit alleyway. During the course of his excursion, Naruto had long forgotten about his self-appointed time restraint as he visited landmark after landmark and tasted some of New York's finest foods, all on the dime of Mary, who apparently came from a wealthy family. Somewhere awesome, Becky, a blonde-haired girl, responded as she led her friends, plus one prince, through the alley. Usually someone your age can't get into a place like this, but I know the bouncer personally. Now that the sun has set and streetlights were on, the girls figured it was time to show Naruto a side of New York he wouldn't be able to see in the brochures. I just wanted to go on record, everyone, that I was the one who said let's just call it a night after we left the pizza place. Mary said as her eyes shifted back and forth. Like an expert, Becky ignored Mary's comment as she came to a stop in front of a big metal door. At first glance, the place looked like it was nothing more than the back entrance of a restaurant, which it actually was, but Becky knew it also served another purpose. 7 loud knocks later, the door opened to reveal a large muscular man. What do you preschoolers want? The bouncer said in a grave tone. We want in, Brock. Becky said a confident voice. Or I'd tell my sister about the thing that happened at the place with that person. A loud gulp was heard before the bouncer stepped aside. Go right ahead. With a smirk on her face, Becky led the group down a flight of stairs and into their final destination of the night, an underground club for teenagers. Good call, Becky, Seriously, this is super appropriate place to take a 13-year-older. Mary muttered to her blonde friend as her eyes swept through the crowded room. Blinding strobe lights, ear-popping music, a few individuals who moved in a drunken stumble, and of course a scantily clad drunk girl who was screaming at a wall. All in all, this wasn't a party for a kid who didn't know the difference between a Lamborghini and a school bus. Take a pill, Mary, Becky said as she began dance. Prince Naruto is gonna be fine, girl. Now cut all that noise out and let's show this kid how us New Yorkers get down. As her friends began to storm the dance floor, Mary rolled her eyes before she glanced towards Naruto. The fish-out-of-water expression the younger teen currently wore did a great job conveying the fact he was having a tough time understanding the scene before him. The smell of sweat and blood filled the air, bodies being tossed left and right, unexplained screams could hear, and some people could be seen with manic looks on their faces. Is this place a battle arena? A hopeful Naruto asked as he began to reach for his sword. Finally, a place where he can get a workout. Whoa, the brunette loudly exclaimed as she took hold of Naruto's wrist before he could unsheath his weapon. Pump your brakes, Spartacus. Although there is a very good chances we're going to see more than a couple of fights tonight if we stay here, but I'm sorry to inform you this place isn't a battle arena. Naruto tried not to look too disappointed as he lowered his hand. Then what sort of place is this? It's a place where people around our ages go to unwind after going through a week filled nothing but annoying parents, teachers and bosses. Mary explained. She knew the phrase, hang out, would most likely go over the Naruto's head, so she made sure she elaborated a bit. I know at first glance it doesn't look very Before she could finish her impromptu lesson about what a hangout is, the pretty brunette felt a hand trying to reach up her skirt. What the hell? She yelled as she turned to see the pervert who tried to grab himself a handful. Unlike the majority populace at the club, the would-be groper who was staring at Mary with a creepy grin on his face was not a teenager, he stood adult. Why wear such a short skirt if you didn't want to make the goods easy access? The adult among teenagers said in his utterly sleazy voice. You asshole, Mary shouted at the top of her lungs as she held her skirt down. I should call the cops and tell them about you. You freaking borderline rapist. The gears in Naruto's head began turning rapidly at the word rapist. Years ago, when his mother first told him the story of how Zeus' son, Hercules, shamed and enslaved the Amazons of the Mysteria, he placed rape as one of the most cruelest man-made acts on their planet. The way his mother's eyes would go cold as she recalled the dark days she and her people had to suffer through could have brought a tear to Naruto's eye. The disgusting deviant waved away Mary's threat. Oh, yeah, call the cops. And you'll be labeled as the bitch who got the most popular hangout in New York shut down just because. The adult's crude and immature rebuttal came to an end when he felt a fist, that had more than a considerable amount of force behind it, dig into his abdomen. A glance downward revealed his attacker was a young blonde kid. Mary watched with wide eyes as the man fell to the ground and began to start violently vomiting. Many partygoers were actually forced to back away to ensure they didn't get any puke on their shoes. Geez, Naruto, what the heck did you do? The Wonder Woman fan asked. Out of all the people she'd seen get punched in the gut, not once had she witnessed someone react in such a disgusting manner. Naruto crossed his arms as he looked down at the man with a sneer on his face. Underneath his seemingly calm demeanor, the son of war was having an internal struggle on whether or not he should take the man's offending hand with his sword. I punched him directly below his ribcage, because, as far as I know, that's the only clear path to the liver. And thanks to Alcuin's secret anatomy lessons, he knew that punching someone in the liver would undoubtedly garner a very unpleasant reaction. Mary groaned as she took Naruto's hand. Come on, let's go find the idiot brigade and get out of here before we run into another creep. And also, I'm more than sure it's past your curfew. However, before the duo could begin combing through the partying teens, they found themselves halted by a deafening bang and a blinding light. It would take at least 10 seconds before bright light finally died down and everyone in the underground club found themselves drawn to the sight of 6 masked men standing side by side near the hangout's entrance. Their appearance made it simple to identify them as criminals. Each man wore an all-black outfit that showed a hint of skin. They all had visible firearms at the ready, and covering each of their faces were farm animal masks. Damn cow. When you first said you knew how to make homemade flash bombs, I'll admit, I was a little skeptical. But those things were awesome. A man in a chicken mask said only to be shushed by their goat-faced leader. "Good evening, young ladies and gentlemen." The goat yelled as he broke ranks to walk among the club's patrons. The shotgun he was currently brandishing was effectively keeping a number of people from becoming brave. "This is, obviously, a robbery. And me and my farmhouse friends here would also appreciated it if you guys would be cool and corporate." "Got it?" His response was an air of silence. "Awesome. First thing first, I need everyone on the ground ASAP, and if me and my guys see anyone try to talk or text on their cell phone, we'll be obligated to start hurting people." Almost immediately, everyone excluding one lone individual dropped to the ground. Still standing, Naruto tilted his head slightly to the right as he eyed the weapons each masked man held. "So these are some of the scum of the earth Artemis told me about." The prince muttered to himself as he stared at the men as if they were a strange zoo exhibit. Since the island nation of the Mistira was basically devoid of crime, this was the first time the young blonde found himself in the presence of a criminal. From her spot on the ground, Mary did her best to grab Naruto's attention before he winded up the robber's spotlight. "Get down before one of those jerks notice you, you idiot," she said in a hushed whisper. Ironically, it was the sound of Mary's awfully dampened voice that grabbed the attention of one of the patrolling criminals. "Well, what do we have here?" the goat said in a playful tone as his eyes narrowed in one the blonde. "It seems we have a damned anarchist on our hands, boys. Because some asshole doesn't want to conform even though it'll be the only thing that keeps him alive." With an audible growl, the goat marched over to the standing individual, stopping only to avoid a puddle of puke. "Hey kid, what is your damn problem?" "My problem?" Naruto asked rhetorically. "My problem is that I'm staring down a coward who chooses to spend his days taking things that isn't his own." Underneath his animal mask, the leader sneered. "You're damn right I'm a problem. Kid, now hit the deck before I..." Before he could begin making his threats, the sight of the kid's golden bracelet and band caught the goat's attention. "That bracelet and that band, take 'em off, kid." Off the slight chances that this kid had parents loaded and dumb enough to let their kid walk around the streets of New York with jewelry like this. Well, he and his friends finally made their big break. Naruto didn't even flinch under the weight of the demand. "Both my mother and aunt gave me these items and I promised them I would never remove them unless I'm passing them to my child." Underneath his mask, the leader rolled his eyes moments before he cocked his shotgun. "I see now that you aren't really that bright, kid, because you just mistook a demand for a fucking re." In one smooth motion, Naruto snatched the shotgun out of the goat's hand and jammed the butt of the weapon into its owner's stomach. "TCH, to threaten the Maeskern, how many fools like you walk this earth?" the blonde prince said before he rendered the weapon useless by snapping it like a pencil. "Chris," a man in a pig mask yelled before he and the rest of the farmhouse bandits pointed their respective weapons at the blonde kid who just effortlessly took out his leader. Contempt was present in Naruto's eyes as he drew his sword. "I can hear the cowardice in your voice. Place your weapon on the ground and you have my word, no harm will come to you." Instead of taking the deal, Pig kept the barrel of his weapon pointed directly on the blonde kid. "Dude, what are you crazy? Me and my friends are the ones with guns. That means we're in charge and I'm telling you to back the hell away from Chris." "Stop saying my real name, you dumb ass." Naruto gave the men a dead-eyed stare that caused their bodies to seize up. "This is not something any of you fools can win." Faster than any of the thieves could anticipate, Naruto covered the distance between him. The PG-faced man cut the man's assault rifle in half with his sword. "The kid is a fucking meta," a chicken-masked man yelled before he began firing his handgun in a desperate attempt to save his own hide. With little effort, Naruto used both his golden bracelet and fleece to deflect the incoming bullets. Thanks to his above-normal reflexes, the blonde Maeskern was able to ensure not a single person was harmed by a stray bullet. Once his weapon was spent of ammo, Chicken snatched off his mask to reveal a dirty and greasy face to the world and glared at the blonde. "I bet you think you got us, don't you?" The unmasked man sneered. "Well, guess what? You didn't. It's time you meet our heavy hitter. Mammoth, get your big ass down here. We got trouble." A second after the shout, the ceiling was violently torn apart, allowing a large, muscular man with wild orange hair to descend into underground basement. Many teens were forced to scramble out of the way before they were crushed underneath the weight of the large man. "What do you mean trouble?" the orange-haired man said, a gruff voice. A accused finger was aimed at the warrior prince. That brat right there. He's a metahuman. You want to get paid? Take this little bastard out of the equation. A fiendish smile made its way onto Mammoth's face as he stared down the brat in question. Seriously? You guys are having problems with this little punk? That's just sad. Despite Mammoth's impressive size and build, Naruto met the taller man's eyes. Can you provide me with a challenge? Hey, get a load of this kid. Challenge he. In an impressive physical display, Naruto launched himself towards Mammoth and kneed the larger man square on his chin. The strength behind the attack was enough to send Mammoth rocketing through the already ruined ceiling. To say everyone was astounded by Naruto's strength would be an understatement. There wasn't a closed mouth in the building as hostages and criminals alike gaped at the blonde. If I return and these people are still being held against their will, I will not be merciful. After witnessing what the blonde teen did to their hulking heavy hitter, the animal-themed criminals wisely dropped their weapons. In a single bound, Naruto was back above street level and staring down a recovering Mammoth. Submit, now! Mammoth released a primal yell as quickly climbed to his feet and rushed the whisker-marked teen. I'll grind yaw into dust. For a well-trained warrior like Naruto, avoiding the large man was a simple act. All he had to do was duck a weave out of any of Mammoth's easily telegraphed punches and wild swipes. A look of annoyance was on the young prince's face as went over the many ways he could put an end to fight. Stand still, you bastard! Mammoth roared as tried his very best to overwhelm the smaller combatant. It was during once of Mammoth's overextended punches when Naruto decided to put an end to it all. This battle was decided the moment you choose to fight a superior warrior. A rising uppercut followed by a sharp elbow to the jaw were just enough to stun orange-haired man, which allowed Hippolyta's only son to take hold of Mammoth's head with both of his hands. Weak, he yelled a moment before he drove his knee into Mammoth's skull, which effectively rendered the man unconscious. Upon his flawless landing, Naruto crossed his arms and stared at Mammoth's unconscious form. You wouldn't last a second on the Mishira. And with that said, he turned around with the intentions of returning to the club to check the conditions of the bystanders. However, at some point during his battle with Mammoth, just about all of the club's patrons had made their way out to watch the battle. Standing directly in front of the crowd was Mary and the other girls Naruto met earlier. After watching everything the young blonde just pulled off, the brunette was finding it difficult to dispute Naruto's claim any further. However, before Mary could voice her newfound belief, she was cut off when someone shoved her aside in order to confront the young hero with a gun in hand. You little nosy bastard! With signs of his run-in with the teen still gracing the front of his shirt, the pervert from Naruto's earlier conflict aimed the barrel of the handgun he found on the club's floor directly at the blonde teen's head. You don't make a guy puke in front of a chick. It's not cool. Before the disparate man had a chance to apply a hint of pressure against the pistol's trigger, an arrow cut through the air like a missile and penetrated the flesh and bone of the man's hand. Arg! He screamed as the gun fell from his hand. Perched atop a nearby building, Artemis, with a bow and arrow in hand, glared at Naruto before her eyes shifted towards Mammoth's senseless form. HMPH, I trust you've had some fun on your adventure, little prince. Before Naruto could question Artemis on how she found him, Deimos, in his normal size, appeared the next to red-headed archer. Traitor! In response to Naruto's accusation, Deimos jumped off the building's roof and walked over to his master. Once the large lion began nuzzle its soft fur against his person, Naruto found himself instantly forgiving Deimos. Well, I guess I can't blame you. I don't there is a person on this earth that can keep Artemis from getting what she wants. In a single leap, Artemis joined Naruto and Deimos. You truly are wise beyond your years, Prince Naruto, because there isn't anything that can keep me from getting what I want. And what I want now is to return to our temporary abode. And with that said, she jumped on Deimos' back. Now let's go. Just one moment, Artemis, Naruto said before turned towards Mary. I had a lot of fun today, Mary. I really hope we'll meet again. The sight of the larger-than-lion made responding very difficult for Mary. Later? As Naruto climbed onto Deimos' back, he was totally unaware that more than a few dozen people were recording his every moment. Dude, one guy said as ensured his Wayne-Tech smartphone tracked the Miscreants and the giant lion until they were long out of range. First thing tomorrow, I'm going to news station and selling this footage for about 10,000 bucks. That's all for now. If you want to see next part, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.